January 20th would prohibit smoking in outdoor dining areas within the city of Los Angeles. David Schulman of the City Attorney's Office explains the parameters of the proposed ordinance.
This ordinance would prohibit smoking in outdoor dining areas that are defined as follows. The typical outdoor dining area that most people think of, such as a patio adjacent to a restaurant. But unlike most other similar ordinances, this ordinance goes further. It addresses two areas where many members of the local public do dine outdoors, and that is in outdoor food courts and from mobile food trucks, vendors, and the like. In those latter two circumstances, the ordinance regulates them as well. It creates a 10-foot perimeter of no smoking around stationary outdoor dining areas like food courts and restaurant patios. It creates a 40-foot no smoking perimeter around any mobile food vendor. It provides for a one-year educational grace period. Shortly after the ordinance, if enacted, all providers are required to post a public education notice that shall be up for 1 year. At the end of 1 year, the full force and effect of the ordinance occurs. At that point, all affected parties are required to take existing no smoking signage requirements and adapt them as outlined in the ordinance for the outdoor dining areas.
Exempted from smoking prohibition would be nightclubs catering to those 18 years and older and restaurants that are officially closed to accommodate private affairs and non-public events. 4th District Councilmember Tom LaBonge invokes the City Council legacy of Hernani Bernardi.
You know a little of my history. I used to smoke, and in fact I smoked in this room. And I remember Mr. Bernardi took a cigarette out of my hand right over there. You won't see anybody smoking in this room anymore because there's an ordinance, there's an awareness. You'll see less and less people smoking for the reasons of health, which are so important on this area. We want to make good for business, restaurants, nightclubs are a part of our business establishment, but at the same time, public health is number one. And whether it's those who work in the establishments in the secondhand smoke to get affected, those who patronize those establishments will have to find another way. It's a time for a change. I think of those pictures of Bob Dylan, and he said the times they are a-changing, and you see that picture with Bob and a little smoke coming out. Well, you won't see that in the future. You won't see that in the future because we want to try to discourage this habit that does have an effect on the public health of everyone.
The maker of the motion, 12th District Councilmember Greg Smith, explains his own motivation.
I recall decades ago when America began its campaign to protect the lives of its citizens from the effects of smoke. At that time, nearly 50% of the population smoked in this country. Today, in Los Angeles County, it's down to 14%. We are saving lives by our ordinance. And I remember in this chamber, we talked, and Mr. LaBonge talked about it when I was here with Mr. Browdy, when he brought in the very first smoking ordinance in the city. What a cataclysmic event was going to come upon us if we passed that ordinance. People wouldn't go to restaurants anymore. They wouldn't go to our beaches as we expanded the ordinances. People predicted things that never came true. In fact, none of those effects ever happened. What happened was people's lives were saved. And I think that's what we all strive to do. With these ordinances and the strong ordinances that LA passed, was a leader in the state of California and has led throughout the state of California, we have been saving people's lives. And that's a great tribute to all of us, those that were here at the beginning, those that are here today. I introduce this because I've noticed too often as you go into a restaurant, there are smoking patios that are adjacent to and right next to the restaurant. You have to walk through a smoking zone to get inside the restaurant frequently. As a non-smoker and someone who has a really severe reaction to cigarette smoke, I would just get choked up and start coughing just walking into some of my favorite restaurants. And I said, what a horrible thing for me, but also for young children. The most at-risk part of our society, these young children that must go through these areas to get into these restaurants sometime. And so I wondered why we allowed that. I wondered why we allowed 10 feet in front of a door. People would stand right by the door of a restaurant and smoke, and you'd have to walk through that to get in the restaurant. These were things that just needed to be addressed. What came out of this was a better ordinance, and I appreciate so much the work of that working group who really defined the problems that beyond just those few observations that I had and the things that we needed to fix. And so what is before you today is truly the next step in anti-smoking laws for this city, for this state, and this country. I have already had contact from members of the legislature who want to introduce state legislation. We've had contact from numerous other cities that are watching our ordinance and want to introduce something similar because of the strong coalition, the anti-smoking coalition, that have taken around and said, this is what LA is doing, you need to be doing that as well.
The 11th District Council member Bill Rosendahl wonders what teeth this ordinance would have.
How would this law be enforced, and what are the penalties?
It will be enforced the same way all of the other cities' anti-smoking ordinances are enforced. The term of art is self-enforcing. There will be no city agency that's specifically tasked to enforce this. The maximum penalty for a violation of any of the provisions here is an infraction. Maximum penalty is $250. Quite frankly, we don't expect there to be much enforcement need. This is self-enforcing.
All right, in the self-enforcing concept, are all the restaurants, have they been brought into the picture, those that have these little smoking areas or these bars and others, do they see that this is something they have to deal with? Will they get a notice in the mail? I mean, how will they become aware of it, and how will they, find themselves acting to it?
I've been very impressed at the involvement of the coalition that you've heard from. In our office has been advised by the coalition that they're in touch with local restaurant associations. That association is prepared to create language-specific translations of the notice requirement. The city doesn't have to get involved with that, but the business association will help the little mom-and-pop restaurants that cater to different ethnic communities that might not respond well to a notice in one language be able to very easily download the language from the internet.
Now, what about bars?
Bars are exempted from this provision altogether.
Tony Cardenas wonders about the impact of no smoking ordinances in neighboring cities.
There's City X down the road, just a few miles outside of the city of Los Angeles, that actually passed an ordinance. For example, if you're walking to your car in a parking lot of a supermarket, which they tend to be pretty big, some of them, you're not allowed to smoke as you're walking through a parking lot. You're obviously not allowed to smoke on a city park, etc. You're not even allowed to smoke in any public place whatsoever. Inside a restaurant, 20 feet outside a restaurant, on a sidewalk, on a street, riding your bike, etc. If you are in that city, you are not allowed to smoke unless you are in your home. So my point is, I think what we're doing here is a very careful, methodical, well thought out, well discussed, and there's plenty of discourse on how we arrived at this ordinance. I think that's the responsible way of passing ordinances.
In the 19th century, smoking was highly restricted to special smoking rooms. Smoking only became all-pervasive in American society when technology developed a portable smoking device called a cigarette and a portable safety ignition device called a safety match. By the time science realized how dangerous tobacco smoke was, it had thoroughly permeated all of American society. So public health now faces the issue, how do we put the genie back into the bottle, but do it in a series of measured steps?
Greg Smith then recounts an international flight that he took that landed back here in California.
I came in from Canada a few months back and landed in San Francisco. And upon landing, the pilot, as they always do, said, "Welcome to San Francisco International Airport. The weather outside is 75 degrees. The wind is 6 miles an hour. It's 4 p.m. Set your clocks. And if you have a need to smoke, please wait till you leave California." So I thought that was funny, a bit of levity, but it is the reputation California has that we have become a leader in this issue, and we are recognized in that fact around the country, and we need to continue that leadership role, and this is that opportunity today. Thank you.
As groundbreaking and nationally watched as this no smoking ordinance might be, it ended very quickly and with little fanfare.
That matter is now before us. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Forthwith on that matter. 12 votes.
So, the type of smoking debate that took weeks and sometimes years to reach a final vote, this time took less than 40 minutes for council to discuss and approve. Item 18 on Wednesday considered the feasibility of creating lactation rooms for mothers with infants in city facilities with 250 or more occupants. It was brought to the floor by Tony Cardenas.
One of the surveys as of late by the State Department of Labor says that 56% of women with children under the age of 3 are employed outside of the home. In addition to that, only 1/4 of the employers are reported having a lactation program or a designated area. And what makes it even worse is when it comes to government workplaces, only 11% of the facilities in government workplaces in the state of California actually have a lactation program or a designated area. So what I'm hoping to do with this motion, colleagues, is to make sure that we end this practice of requiring women who come to work and are breastfeeding to have to sit in a bathroom, or the fact of the matter is they're doing it on a toilet. That is unfortunately, the default place that women have to go to when the workplace doesn't have a lactation room. It's really unfortunate. And what's really sad is that when you get right down to it, I think it's another example of, unfortunately, it's a man's world. If men had to breastfeed, I think that at least 60, 70, 80% of the workplaces would have lactation rooms. But unfortunately, men aren't the ones that have to breastfeed, so we as policymakers should be astute enough to realize that this is an issue that whether or not we have to breastfeed or not, we need to address this. And it needs to be addressed on behalf of our workers and behalf of the community of Los Angeles. So what this motion is requesting and asking the city of Los Angeles is to immediately come back with a report in the next 30 days to figure out how we can start this process within city facilities that have 250 workers or more to have a lactation room readily available to the women who work in our workforce.
Public comment was very supportive.
The Breastfeeding Task Force is dedicated to improving the health and well-being of infants and their families by promoting, supporting, and protecting breastfeeding in LA County. Breastfeeding is a primary public health prevention measure. It prevents illness, chronic and acute illness in children. Babies have less ear infection, less diarrhea, less pneumonia, less asthma and allergy, less diabetes, and less obesity. Mothers' health is improved also with less breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and diabetes. But in particular, it also is helpful for employers. So the city, being one of the largest employers in the county, will benefit because there will be less absenteeism. When mothers and fathers do not have to stay home with sick children, then they are at work. So this is going to benefit the bottom line in this city. There's also less turnover. Women who are supported in their breastfeeding tend to stay at their job. We don't have to pay to replace them. So this motion is good for our youngest citizens, our babies, but also for the city itself.
That matter is now before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Very well.
Thus, council orders a study into the feasibility and potential cost of lactation rooms in city facilities with at least 250 employees. LA City View is the government access cable channel for the City of Los Angeles, featuring live coverage of city council meetings and programming about city department services and events. Now, you can watch city council meetings live or view past meetings by going to the city's website at lacity.org. Follow the instructions for video on demand. And remember, you can watch all Los Angeles City Council meetings live in their entirety on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays beginning at 10 a.m. On Sundays, you can watch the replay of all the week's meetings, also beginning at 10 a.m. Council Week in Review can be seen Monday through Friday at 9:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m., and on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Well, that concludes our program for the week ending January 22nd, 2010. On behalf of Marlene Crump and everyone here at Channel 35, I'm Jack Popejoy. Thank you for watching, and please join us for the next Council Week in Review.
Before approaching an intersection, so that's why 2 wrong turns don't make a right turn. Now let's learn about tailgating.
Hey, that's how I got my ticket.
You got a ticket for tailgating? That's not good.
That can be really annoying.
Doesn't get you there any faster.
It leaves you no distance to brake.
Which makes it easier to get into a crash.
And it also may increase your insurance premium.
And I hate tailgaters.
Tailgating causes crashes. Back off. Watch the road.
You think it can't happen to someone like you? Are you crazy? It could happen to anyone.
No one can save your life, nor the life of someone you love.
Hey, it's free. It's painless and easy. Don't be scared. Just get tested. Know for sure. Get an HIV test now.
Hey, buddy! You with the stupid hat! Come here. Closer. No parking! Do you know what happens when you park illegally on these narrow hillside streets? You block the street so emergency vehicles can't pass. Each year, homes are destroyed and lives are lost because of drivers like you who park illegally! And you know what else? You can get a citation! And you can be towed!
Help us get to the emergency. The life we save just might be yours.
How'd you know?
The ball called.
Hey, look out for the pothole!
LA City View Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to Council Members Perry and Zine who are here on time. Thank you to Council leadership. We are awaiting all other Council members who are now late. It is 10:01. Council Member Huizar is excused today, and other than that, we expect everybody to be in chambers right now. Council Members Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, and Wesson. You are late, so if you can make your way down as soon as possible. Alarcon, Correct, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith. Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Wednesday, the 27th of January, 2010. We're here in the John Ferraro Council Chamber, room 340 of City Hall, and we welcome members of the public who have joined us here today, as well as those viewers on Channel 35, which broadcasts us live throughout the city's cable system and rebroadcasts us each evening. We are here every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m., as I mentioned. We also are available for your convenience, not just on television, but through your telephone and your computer. Telephone, you can call 213-621-CITY and listen to the audio proceedings of our council meetings or any of our full council committees. And also through the internet at lacity.org, we have live streaming webcasts of our council meetings, and those past council meetings are archived there as well. Also online, you'll find our agendas, which are available in the lobby of City Hall 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but also through the city clerk's office. But you can click through and online on those agendas. You can watch the council meetings that have taken up those items in the past, and or read any of the reports that council members get as well for your information and to empower the people of Los Angeles with the very same information that we have as we make our decisions affecting the quality of life here in Los Angeles. If folks would like to be heard on any of the items that are before us, there are cards in the back, as well as in Van Nuys and San Pedro, where folks can testify remotely. There, if you'd like to fill out a speaker card or here, hand that to the sergeants at arms or the staff that is there on call, and we'll make sure to include your cards in any items that have not yet had a public hearing. For those that have had a public hearing, it requires a council member to reopen those hearings to be heard. And finally, we have a section called General Public Comment, which is usually towards the top of the meeting, and that's for items that are not on the agenda, but nevertheless under the city's jurisdiction. I want to thank those council members who are here pursuant to council rules. It is now about 10:08, and council members Cardenas, Hahn, Krikorian, Parks, Perry, Wesson, and Zine are here. Mr. Alarcon and Mr. Weezer are excused, so we are waiting Mr. Koretz, Mr. Labange, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Rosendahl, and Mr. Smith. Those council members are late. If they'll please make their way down as soon as possible so we can not waste the time of the public and that of our guests that are here in council chambers. As soon as we have 10 members, we will begin the meeting. If we fail to reach a quorum in the next few minutes, we will adjourn for lack of a quorum. So again, council members Koretz, Labange, Reyes, Rosendahl, and Smith, if you will please join us. Just by way of announcements as well, today is a Holocaust Remembrance Day, and certainly the City of Los Angeles commemorates that day and remembers those victims of the Holocaust, many survivors of which live here in Los Angeles. So to them, their families, we remember this day alongside them and commemorate that with them as well. We will begin the meeting shortly. Thank you for your patience while we wait council members Koretz, Labange, Reyes, Rosendahl, and Smith. And if I can ask the sergeants at arms to inquire to those council members' whereabouts. Thank you. is a final forum call for council members Koretz, Labange, Reyes, Rosendahl, and Smith. If you'll please, Mr. Reyes, thank you very much. We're waiting Mr. Koretz, Mr. Labange, Mr. Rosendahl, and Mr. Smith. One more member, and we have 10 members to begin the meeting. Thank you to those members who are here. Again, council members Koretz, Labange, Rosendahl, and Smith. You'll please make your way to chambers as soon as possible. It's more than 10 minutes after the hour. Thank you. Please call the roll. Mr. Smith is here.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Han, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Wesson, Sign, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Honor guard, present flags. Thank you very much. First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
All right. Mr. Krikorian moves and Mr. Smith seconds. Without objection, those minutes will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Cardenas moves and Ms. Hahn seconds without objection. Those will be approved as well. If we can please run through the agenda. Colleagues, we're going to run through the agenda. If I can please bring your attention to those items before us. First items, please.
First items on the agenda are items noticed for public hearings. Item number 1 is a street vacation in CD 14, and the recommendation is to instruct the city engineer to proceed.
Okay, we'll move that on number 1. Should we take that vote separate from the others?
Yes. There's a card on 2, and then 3 and 4 are both findings of public convenience or necessity in Council District 9. I believe the recommendation is to grant the application.
Okay, Ms. Perry, on those items in CD9, to move those, okay. Please open the roll on 1, 3, and 4 then. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is approved. Let's just take up 2 real quick. Richard Mazzola, if you'd like to come forward on item number 2, please.
Is that me you call Richard Mazzola? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'm here on item number 2 in regards to the market that's trying to put in a liquor license on Mildred Avenue. And I've been living there for over 30 years, and we've had an increase in population and an increase in traffic. The store only at this time only has enough space for 3 15-minute parking spots. And when the delivery trucks come to deliver their merchandise, it takes up all 3 spaces, and there are no spaces left for cars. And when that happens, the people park in the red, they park in the alley, they park in behind the driveways and block driveways. The neighborhood already has problems with homeless people and alcoholics where we live. We live right by the beach. It's just not a good idea. I mean, they already have a beer and wine license there, and I don't see any need to have an alcohol license because we have a problem, big problem with alcoholics and homeless people where I live. And to put in more, and there's within a walking distance, within a mile and a half, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, you can be to 5 different liquor stores where I live in Venice. And I don't think this is a very good situation for the area where I live. And also there are other things dating back to 2003 with the Coastal Commission, which disapproved any kind of food or sitting area for the market, and that all has been done. They put in a deli, they put in a seating area outside, and the Coastal Commission said that would not be liable. They weren't allowed to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Arnold Sachs on number 2, and then Zumadog.
Thank you. Good morning. Arnold Sachs. Since you put in a minimum standard yesterday for your marijuana dispensaries of 1,000 feet, and in your agenda today, on one of the items, there's a minimum prohibition of sales of 600 feet and a maximum, although 1,000 square feet would be preferable, here's a chance for the city council to really act, to really clean up, to inundate the city with more liability cases, court cases, suits. Why don't you do the same standards for liquor stores and outlets that want to sell liquor and set up minimum, maximum standards like you have for, you want to set up for tobacco at schools and you have for marijuana sales. I think 1,000 feet from any residence or any school or any, I don't know, vital building would be a great standard. And look at all the lawsuits that would be inundate the city because most of these buildings have been would have been grandfathered in under the existing ordinances. You've done it with the marijuana clinics where you've increased the standard to 1,000 feet. You don't expect to get lawsuits based on that fact? Who are you kidding? This would be a chance for you to really line the pockets of the people sitting on the top floors of the high-rises, the 100-story buildings that are in downtown L.A., the top 2 floors. They may need to have renovations, so they may need a little extra spending cash. This is your chance. Put in minimum, maximum opportunities for these markets, for liquor stores, and see where the chips fall. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Zuma Dog is our next speaker.
Yes, we're talking here about approving another liquor store, and I'd like to remind council about the medical marijuana ordinance. I certainly hope that you take this alcohol as seriously as marijuana. I'm here to say I would much rather be in a car with somebody that smoked way too much marijuana than somebody that drank way too much alcohol. And everybody's so concerned about, gee, what about collectives that might sell to kids? Gee, what about underage drinking? Underage drinking is a much bigger problem. And so, first of all, I'd like to congratulate LA City Council. Here's the headline regarding the medical marijuana. Today, LA City Council voted to push medical marijuana sales.
Sir, if you'll bring it back to this item before us. You can talk about that at general comment.
This statement I'm about to read is a precursor to what I'm going to say after it, and I don't think it's City Council's job to be my mind reader to try to figure out where I'm going to go next. It's called the First Amendment, it's called the Brown Act, and I don't want anybody interrupting me, and when I'm making a point, and it's very germane and
Sir, if you'll please lower your voice. Thank you. Okay, you've now gotten personal. Sir, you've lost your right to speak right here. You know the code of conduct. If you'll please sit down. If you'll please sit down. It says no personal abusive remarks, sir. If you'll please sit down. Thank you. That will close our general comments for this item. Mr. Rosendahl, did you want to move the motion one way or the other?
Colleagues, I'd like us to approve it. We've surveyed the community, people right around it in the neighborhood. 30 of them have signed a petition and want to go forward with it, so I would like it approved.
Okay. There's a motion to move approval. If we can please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 5 through 23. Reports have been submitted report has been submitted on 23. There's 2 on item number 22. And number 5 is an ordinance. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Yeah, let's hold the ordinance so we have one more member. I'll call 23 special. Mr. Rosendahl?
Yes, 20, and of course you mentioned 22 with cards, so 20 and 22 together.
Okay. So we had a public hearing, Mr. Rosendahl? So you wanted to call 22 to reopen the public hearing, even though we had a public hearing?
Yes, I'd like to, please.
Okay. We'll call that special for you. Any other specials, colleagues? If not, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have not been held. Items 24 through 30. 10 votes are required for consideration.
There's no objection to considering those. Those items are before us. Anybody wishing to call items special? Do we have cards on some of those items?
Yes, there's cards on 24, 26, 28, and 29.
Okay. Those will be called special. Any other specials from the council? We'll open and close the other public hearings. If not, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items are the closed session items, 31 through 34, and there's a request to continue items 31 and 32, and that would be February 5th.
Okay. If there's no objection, we'll continue that till the 5th, and we'll move
would
the
you
others
like
on the
to
table. Call this special, please.
Next items then are on the continuation agenda. Item number 35 is an item for which public hearing has been held.
Okay. Item 35, 36, anybody wishing to call those special? So, okay, on both? Both of them, 35 and 36? Oh, just 35. Okay. And 36, Mr. Parks will call special?
Special, and if we could ask to have it out of order, we have
Sure.
a family.
Why don't you take that up right now, Mr. Parks?
Take it now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Let me ask the Joy Vernon and her family to come up to the podium. Colleagues, we have a reward motion today, and just to give you the details of the circumstances, on Sunday, April 5th, 2009, at approximately 1:05 hours, Damian White, a male black, 19 years of age, parked his vehicle just north of the Sharon Community Theater, located at 5533 South Western. White exited his vehicle, became involved in a verbal dispute with a 415 group in the area. While engaged in a verbal dispute with the group, a suspect within the group fired multiple rounds at the victim, striking him several times. He entered his vehicle and managed to drive to the 76 gas station located northeast corner of Vernon and Slauson, where he succumbed to his injuries. Today we have with us Joy Vernon, Damian's mother, and a number of family members, and she'd like to make a personal plea to anyone that has information to help LAPD solve this crime. Ms. Vernon?
Yes, on this night, my son was taken away from me, and I have nothing else. Damian was a good person. He would never do this to anyone. Please, anyone that has any information, please, so I can move on just a little bit. Thank you.
Okay. Does you have another family member who wants to speak?
I'd just like to say to the councilman that it would be nice for us to move on. Damian, you guys understand, I've been in Damian life since he was 4 years old. And the one thing I always take with me is that he said, "You my dad." And you gotta understand, I lost a kid too. I got others, but my other kids, they hurt too, because that was their brother. She need closure, because you guys don't understand. That was all she had. She had nothing else. If you walk in her house, you swear you ain't seen a shrine like this shrine. This lady, since that day, he can tell you the day that he got killed, this lady been at the grave every single day since that day. She has nothing else. So I'm asking the public, help her move on. She needs to move on. Every day at the grave, that's a lot to ask for somebody. Every single day. That's hard on anybody. That's hard for me to even hear that she's still doing that. I went a few times, but I can't do it every day. She does it every day. Please help.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, this is a $50,000 reward, and we ask the public if they have any information to contact Detective Garza at the Criminal Gang Homicide Unit at 213-485-1383. And again, we'd hope that anyone in the public that was a witness to the shooting at 5531 Southwestern, or possibly a witness at the 76 service station at Western and Slauson, if they could come forward and assist us. You had to come.
Yes, my name is Greg Goodyear. I was Damian's coach at Culver City High School. I'd like to say a little bit about him, and as well as hope that the city council here would go ahead and pass that amendment. I knew Damian since his freshman year. Here's a young man who, like a lot of young men that come to us, was needed some help. He did a very phenomenal job in the classroom to make himself eligible to get a football scholarship, which he went to University of Minnesota. Unfortunately, one class in that quest to get his degree and so forth had made him come back to Los Angeles. Went to El Camino College, was going to be the starter there. Unfortunately, went to this party where he got involved with some quote-unquote gang members, I guess. And the problem that we have, the problem that we face, as you all well know, is that in California, Los Angeles, the country, when gang members are involved, and so people don't want to talk. And it's hard to get the kids that I know and so forth to come forth, to say something for fear of them, of retribution against their families and them personally. And I know personally several team members of his know information and are afraid to come forward. And hopefully, with this movement by the council, that we can get some movement, in the people to overcome this dreadful disease that's spreading throughout the country of not coming forward when people are snuffed out like this. Damien was a great kid. He went from, being a good football player and marginal student to a 2.6 GPA with a 960 SAT score, and was progressing fairly well. Should have been a starter there at University of Minnesota and would have got his degree. Unfortunately, for one class, he dropped below that level and they had to remove him. But he was working towards that, when he was going to El Camino College. And I implore you to give this family closure. They need it. And please, thank you.
Item 36. Thank you very much. And go ahead, sir, please.
Just to touch on what he said, it was a gang member that took his life. Just so you guys know, he wasn't involved in the gang because they made him look like he was a gang. He was a football player. He dedicated his life to football. And please understand this. The only thing I heard him tell me all the time is, when I make it, I'm going to take care of you and my mama. He ain't never talked about no gangs. And he knew I didn't play that. So please, he's not a gang maker. So all that news media that came out with that gang stuff, that wasn't him. That was the other person. Damien is a protector. He would protect you. If he knew you, he would protect you because he felt like you was one of his. So please do not, no gangs, not him.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you to the entire family and the coach for being here. Let's go ahead and open the roll on this reward motion. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That's approved unanimously. We'll send that right away to the mayor for his signature and get that reward out there on the street. Thank you all very much for taking time out of your day to be here, and our sympathies to your family as well on this tragedy. If we can go back now to items, if we can take up 5, we have 12 members. If we can please open the roll on that ordinance, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
And please send that forthwith. We'll now go to general public comment. Dr. Clyde Williams is our first speaker.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno. I would like to express appreciation to councilpersons Smith and Parks. At least 2 people showed up the other night for the Budget and Finance Committee. Mr. Cardenas was there, but he's not a member of the committee. Where were the others? No quorum was there. So we had a lot of public comments, but with totally inadequate representation on the part of the committee. So I would hope that we would at least be able to have a quorum for committees when hearing public comments, especially when it's costing us maybe $1 to $2 million a day for each day of delay in the budget and changes of the budget. So we're quite concerned. A lot of people showed up. It was a bad night, and we still continued. So I would like to know from the city attorney whether we have to have a quorum in order to hear public comments. That's one. Number 2, we have a slumlord in Northeast LA called Caltrans. Supposedly, they have an exemption from the city council regarding code enforcement. People are told, hey, The city can't enforce it on state lands, and this is state lands for the last 30 years. More than 200 houses, tenants. Some of them who express concerns are then told, hey, keep your mouth shut, elsewise we'll evict you. One gentleman has been, quotes, evicted 3 times, successfully fought it in court, and showed that Caltrans was a slumlord. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams. Carl Klein is our next speaker, and after that is Patrick Wiseman. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you so much for this time.
Could you just move the microphone up a little so we can hear you a little better? Thank you.
Sure enough.
Thank you.
I'm Carl Kleins, owner of the first medical marijuana dispensary that's been legal in the city of Los Angeles. I know the vote's been taken, and it seems to be a fait accompli. The only issue that I understand can be changed is the priority process. Giving priority based solely on how quickly you're registered is wrong on a lot of levels, especially given the fact that the city failed to give written notice of the impending deadline to those of us that are in business legally for almost 2 years. You've kind of taken the route of least resistance by going off of that list. It's a matter of record that you can just look it up and see who had their business license first, of which we know that we did. As a filmmaker doing live-action reality-based television programming around the world with the DEA, I was able to open in Venice with the advice of a couple of retired DEA agents. We've always and still follow the rules. On the map in planning, it shows a church that's within 1,000 feet. It doesn't exist and hasn't been there for many years. In your current selection process, you've given priority to a dispensary that was opened by a man that admittedly spent 5 years in prison and is a 2-time felon. This information could be found in an article in the New Yorker of last year's issue. It was an interview by him. We were the first to be in Venice. You've moved us all the way down to last priority, which means we'll be out in the boondocks somewhere. I don't know where it's going to put us, but we were the first legal dispensary that obeyed all of the rules in the city of Los Angeles and in Venice. All of our workers are volunteers. I personally have made $1,140 in 4.5 years. I did not do this for profit. I'm retired. Please support the Good Neighbor exemption. If you can't change the process, support the Good Neighbor exemption so at least we can stay. We're right on the border of Santa Monica. There's no one around us, no churches, no schools, no homes, nothing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments this morning. Patrick Wiseman is our next speaker. After that is Deborah Stevens. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Garcetti, City Council. I didn't speak yesterday. I think there was enough said yesterday. And I'm not here for the claps or for the glory. But what you saw yesterday, you saw a lot of pissed off people. You saw a lot of threats on lawsuits, which we cannot afford in the city of LA. And a lot of them have a point here. I mean, you have to understand that I stood up here and I told you guys, okay, that the municipal code book, you know, chapter 1 for land use is the alibi that everybody's going to have in court. The people who are against collective, the people who are for collectives, the people who have agriculture. You know, where I'm a little bit angry here is that I know most of you have been to, you know, have had bachelor's degrees. Some of you have gone to law schools. You got to be smarter than us. And all you have to do is read the law. I mean, some of us have traveled through 3 continents to come to this country because the 10 commandments of this country, the laws, it's what stands. And you guys think there is a gray area. There is no gray area in a municipal code that says you cannot create an ordinance that creates a monopoly. There is no gray area there, Mr. Garcetti or City Council. There, you know, if you want to change something, you do have the right to do it, but there is a procedure to do it. You cannot change a zone unless you change a GPA. To change a GPA, you got to have public notice. You got to have hearings. Then there is an Assembly Bill 283 or 282 that clicks in, and then it makes it confront with the state law. But if you guys are going to have, okay, a place that you're trying to push a by right to grow stuff on Melrose, while there is a guy who owns a building that charges $20,000 to Victoria's Secret, and all of a sudden he's going to have tomatoes because that's the by right you're giving. Cannabis, tomatoes, and agriculture. You got to think about this stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Weissman. Please. Appreciate it. Deborah Stevens is our next speaker. Thank you very much. Arnold Sachs will follow Ms. Stevens. Good morning.
Good morning, council members. I'm here today to say that it saddened me yesterday to witness the vote that was taken on the medical marijuana ordinance. There was a real viable option for you all to take on this issue, and that option was to invalidate the ordinance and let state law prevail. State law allows law enforcement of those collectives that may not be complying with the law the voters passed that have created such a bad mark in this city. But now, with the passage of this ordinance, I feel that the residents of this city have now been made to bear the burden of the consequences of this ordinance at a time when the city's taxpayers are so overburdened. I voted for the Compassionate Use Act knowing that state law would rule the land. The ordinance that you passed yesterday to regulate medical marijuana not only did a disservice to the taxpayers of this city, but also will not allow the compassion for those patients that truly need medical marijuana and deserve safe access and affordable cost from those medical marijuana collectives that will truly follow the state law that the voters of California passed. In addition, our city attorneys will now have the lawsuits to deal with in response to this ordinance, and they will come. This is a sad state of affairs in that the city has so many serious problems that our city attorneys have not had the time to adequately deal with. One such problem is adequately and effectively prosecuting the code enforcement violations in this city that are sitting on the books and are mounting each and every day. These code enforcement violations put the residents of this city at risk. It is a health and safety issue for this city. Now, unfortunately, the taxpayers of this city will now bear the burden of the cost of the lawsuits that will appear due to the medical marijuana ordinance, and our lawsuits that will appear due to the medical marijuana ordinance that our city attorneys will now need to deal with instead of making the real improvements that the city needs and deserves. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stevens. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker, to be followed by Mr. Dog.
Good morning. Thank you. Arnold Sachs. Now you've done it. According to this article from the Daily Breeze, I believe from last week, Jane Harmon questions LAX expansion plan. She's concerned about a $1.5 billion expansion of the Tom Bradley International Terminal. She's not concerned with the design for the Midfield Satellite Concourse, the passenger processing facility east of the Bradley Terminal, the changes in the blueprints for the grand plan at LAX that are not going to be built. She's not concerned with the $41 million spent on architects drawing these plans that aren't going to be used. Not concerned with the $125 million to Dimgen to oversee the renovations of LAX that are not going to be occurring. She's not concerned about the two bonds for $900 million each, one authorized by the City Council, one authorized by the LAWA, but only one being held accountable for. She's not concerned with the project costs increasing from $3 billion to $5 billion to $8 billion. No transit included in these above costs or plans, but Jane Harmon is concerned about security. She's not concerned about the runway safety lights and how can you be secure if you're not safe. In the late 70s, on Saturday Night Live, a skit called World News Update was performed. Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin were anchors for the skit. After Curtin would conclude a presentation, Aykroyd would turn to her, and I quote here, say, "Jane, you ignorant slut." The same status. How can you not be concerned for the cost of this project?
Sir, I know you're quoting something, and I'll keep your time, but I know you're quoting something, but if you'd please refrain from marks of an abusive or sexual nature. Thank you.
So you said you'd hold my time.
I said I will make sure you have your time. Go ahead.
The point being that it was heard on national television. But if you're not concerned about the cost for this project, how can you have any concerns about any kind of security?
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Dog, before you, if you want to come forward, no one was going to take away a second of your time when you were speaking before. Sir, you have the right to speak, and we've seen that exercised thousands of times here. I asked you to please lower your voice. We've had issues with both microphones and speakers that have been blown out. And you know the Code of Conduct says no overly loud or personal comments or abusive comments. So with that warning, sir, you now have 2 minutes to say what you would like to say.
Thank you.
In general public comment.
Yes, thank you. I'd first like to say that regarding interruptions when I'm talking about the items, it is not for Council President to try to read my mind and tell where I'm going. I know that there's sometimes you can be off topic. If it's a thing about rent escrow and I'm talking about a better speech ordinance, you're off topic. If I'm talking about pet activism, you're off topic. But in that context, I was not off topic. Now, speaking of medical marijuana, here's the breaking news. LA City Council voted to push medical marijuana sales onto the streets, into residential neighborhoods, and into the parks. Gang members celebrate. So the Zuma Dog take on what happened yesterday is I seriously believe that certain council members want to shut down all the collectives to run the game themselves with their crews on the street. I'm here to say, when you look at when they tried to shut down all these collectives where people go safely with security guards behind fences, and it's the safest gig in town, and you want to shut those down and push it out on the streets, I think we have council members with vested interest of selling the weed on the streets with their crews. Why else would you want to shut them all down? So to repeat, LA City Council votes to push medical marijuana sales on the streets, into the neighborhoods, and into parks. Way to go. Am I allowed to call you dummies? Now on to the budget. To quote Eric Garcetti, he thinks he's going to run for mayor. He's on the TV yesterday. We are in a full-blown budget emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Garcetti declares we are in a full-blown budget emergency. The selling off of assets, the firing of thousands of people. It's going to be much worse. Miguel Santana said we've had double-digit revenue loss for 4 quarters in a row, and that's the Great Depression. I'm here to say you council members blew it. I came here for 2 years, warned every step of the way. We're exactly where I said we'd be. We're exactly where I said we'd be. You people blew it.
Thank you very much, sir. Matt Dowd is our next speaker. After that is Richard Mazzola.
Yes, thank you. First of all, while Dennis signs up there with the council president, can the council get Eric to school him about public comment? Because they denied me a comment last week, but I seen yesterday you took a public comment card. I don't want any reverse comment. This is not a discussion. And then you took a comment card from someone 40 minutes into the public comment. So it's all on tape. Thank you. Someone better apologize, because that's as applied right there. Dennis signed, big mistake. So here's what I want the city council to do. Here's what I want the whole city council to do. I want you to go up to Bill Rosendahl and say, "You're a liar, Bill Rosendahl. You're a liar." I want the council to say that. See? And I want you to go to Dennis Zine. "You're an idiot." So when you see Dennis Zine in the back, say, "Wow, you were an idiot the other day." So it's language, and we're in a First Amendment thing with you for years, and you need Mike Clayson's in here, because now I'm getting angry because the Ninth Circuit were very nice to us. If you've never been to them in Pasadena, the mediator read our whole lawsuit and told Mike Clayson's to his face, "We don't want this appeal. It all looks good. Pay the money into the court. We'll settle it all. We'll drop the appeal and move away." Mike Clayson's to his face. So you're not bothering me. You know who you're pissing off. The Ninth Circuit, United States District Court. So, since you're denying me all my public comment, let me tell you, I've started up a website now, stickcam.com, and I'm Matt, MATT_Dowd, so I'll be having my political comment about the city of Los Angeles. If anything you want to know, come and check me out. 6 p.m. Pacific time. And Eric Garcetti, you can tell him, stop using sexual references on TV. He's out there everywhere last night on TV, using sexual references, talking about the city of Los Angeles budget, how it's full-blown.
Thank you very much, sir. Richard Mazzola is our next speaker. And we'd just put a warning forward, too, that slanderous comments are also covered by our code of conduct, sir. Please, Mr. Mazzola.
Forget the comment. Good morning. I'd just like to bring
Mr. Dog, if you please sit down and not disrupt the meeting, clear that aisle. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Mazzola, go ahead.
I'd like to bring up an issue that I've been dealing
that I've been dealing with since 2003 with the city as far as the Safety and Building Commission. I have a letter here from the Coastal Commission denying the store at 600 Mildred an area for dining or no food, nothing was supposed to change. They've opened the store up to the back. They've taken a regular 2306 Ocean Avenue. They've taken the front yard and made that part of 600 Mildred. They've actually extended the store into a housing area, and this is since 2003, and nothing has happened. Every time I phone the city about it, they say, that's the way it is. Our Coastal Commission, I guess, doesn't hold much weight in this country. I don't know. I've tried to talk to them about it, and they keep telling me, why are you hassling this little business? I'm not hassling nobody. Why can they get away with doing things that the Coastal Commission says they can't do? They continuously do it. It's just not a good situation. Nobody wants to answer for, take the responsibility for straightening this mess out. Coastal Commission denied it. The city approved it. Who's the boss here? I don't know. This has been going on since 2003, and I have had no help from anybody, no help from the city. They just keep on saying, it's the way it is. It's not the way it is. It's supposed to be. When you have something from the Coastal Commission, they don't pay attention to it. The city just looked right by and grants him permits, grants him all the things that he has. So why do we have a Coastal Commission if it isn't efficient? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzola. That will close our general public comment. If we can go to the items that have been called special, please.
First item called special, Mr. President, is item number 20, and that was called special by Council Member Rosendahl.
22. Okay. Ms. 20.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could ask staff to come on up on this. 22 and 22. And we also have 22.
Got you. We're going to take them up together?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Judy? Oh, it's okay.
Michelle Mallory, Senior Bicycle Coordinator with the Department of Transportation. On item number 20, bicycle sharing, Councilmember Gruhl introduced a motion to ask the department to issue a request for information to investigate the possibility of developing a bicycle sharing program in the city of LA. The most popular program is a program that was introduced a few years ago in Paris called the Vélib program, which essentially is a free bike program where the bicycles are deposited throughout the city at stations, and you can check them out with a credit card through membership in the program. So we've been looking at doing this. We issued a request for information, received several proposals back, three of which look reasonably viable, and we've asked council to direct us to move forward with those three, as well as work with Metro on a project that they look like they're developing as well.
Yeah, and if I could, for my colleagues and also for the community in the bicycling world and those on Channel 35, for the record, I want to ask a couple of questions, which we've also done in committee. How many responses to the RFQ or RFI did you receive on this?
I don't have them in front of me, but my recollection is we received 7 or 8.
7 or 8, that's what we heard in committee. Are any of the respondents operating bicycle share programs in other U.S. cities?
There are a few out there now. The newest ones that are coming online, we have been told, are Boston and San Francisco are supposed to release something this spring. The project that we probably know the most about is a small pilot program in Washington, D.C. right now of 100 bicycles at 10 different stations. They've been doing relatively well, generating 7 to 8 trips a day per bicycle with only one theft at this point.
That's very cool. And what I'd like for us to understand, what is a typical model for a bicycle share programs? Is it a municipally funded, or do nonprofit organizations operate the program? How does it work?
Well, they started out, the first program started about 30 years ago, or maybe a little bit more at this point, in Amsterdam, and it was called the White Bike Program. And they were essentially just free bikes that were set around the city. They were painted white to distinguish them, and they all ended up in the canals. They were stolen, vandalized, and spent a lot of time swimming. So that was the first generation. The second generation is the Vélib program, which was funded through ad revenue through the city of Paris. It's a massive program, citywide. literally hundreds of thousands of bicycles on the city streets that are paid for with ad revenue. The reports are they've lost about 80% of those bicycles, though, either into the river, or there are reports of some being seen in Europe. But the new model of the Generation 3 that's being promoted through a program in Montreal, and that's probably the most popular and the newest example in North America, is Montreal has copied the Lead program, but they funded it. And I believe, if my figures are correct, they funded it at a cost of $40 million Canadian. So it was public investment at that point, and then hundreds of thousands of bicycles on the street.
Now, Metro is also looking at this, and where are they at, and how can we coordinate with them, and how can it be a win-win for everybody?
Well, as you know, at Transportation Committee, Mr. Derek Fethheim came forward and mentioned the program that they're doing with Metro. We heard rumors of it, but hadn't had any formal introduction to what they're doing. They have private investors who have a small amount of money and are looking to do a program, my understanding is primarily in the Hollywood area, a pilot program, and they want to make sure that what we do will cross-coordinate with theirs, which makes sense.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it, and bicycle sharing has been discussed in the context of addressing the first and last mile of a transit trip, getting people to the transit by methods other than single-passenger vehicles. If this one is one of our goals, do we have a sense of where the best locations that we would operate them in LA are?
We don't yet, and that was one of the things we would like to really explore with these vendors, as well with Metro, because Metro's looking at this with their stations. Hollywood's an interesting location. I always thought a pilot program for us would be really good around the university campuses. A lot of kids do have bikes there, but there are areas where we have city parking lots, where we could see stations at those lots, and then stations in conjunction with the campuses. So there are a number of avenues we could explore.
And I think that's indeed the first exciting strategy, because you would see bicycles all over the universities, and to tie them together like that would be great. This is my recommendation, colleagues, on this one before we get into 22. Approve the department's recommendations, direct the department to coordinate with the Metro effort, and direct them to report back in 90 days on this program. Do I have a second for that? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
That's great.
Can we approve that one?
We will incorporate that on our final vote. Absolutely. Accepted as a friendly amendment without objection. We're going to have 20 and 22 separately, so we'll incorporate into the appropriate one.
Okay.
Okay. Are you good?
I'm good on 20. Now I want to go to 22.
Okay, can I ask you to, we did 6 minutes to open, can I ask you to press your button again?
Sure.
Okay, and then I'll just go through the rest of the folks in the queue and we'll come right back to you? Okay. Mr. Reyes is next.
Thank you, Council President. First, I want to thank Councilor Rosendahl for moving this forward as chair of the committee. I know we'll have a greater focus, and hopefully we'll create a strategies in how we find the resources to make this happen. I'm very supportive of the sharing program, and when we look at transit-oriented development, it fills very serious gaps. When we look at trains, bus lines, all converging in these transit centers, all we need is the bicycle and its ability to create that alternative mode of transportation. So it's a very, very important policy. But I've also heard that some folks are concerned that instead of bike sharing, we should be more focused on creating a better bicycle infrastructure. And I agree with that too. We need more facilities for bicyclists, and strongly believe we can work on these issues simultaneously so that they are synergistic effects. Currently, our bridges are being designed, many bridges over the river. There are other bridges that are being retrofitted that are already paid for. These are special projects. So as we align these new pathways and redesign them, we should always have the bicycle as a high priority in enhancing these pathways for bicyclists. In terms of looking forward to a bike sharing program in the city, along with new bike lanes, bike routes, and additional infrastructure that enhances connectivity and encourages biking as a viable transportation alternative. So I know in District 1 we want to promote a pilot project to see how we can look at our streetways, redesignations. It's a big ticket item, but if we begin to think this way, we can eventually create a citywide system that is real. So as a kid who was struck by a car while riding my bike. I take this very seriously, and I'm hoping that we are able to connect the dots when we talk about economic development, transit-oriented development, the issue of obesity with kids and giving them an option to ride their bikes in a safe manner while stimulating new economies around these new systems. So I look forward to working with you and seeing this continue to evolve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Zine is our next speaker.
I just want to say I've seen that in Paris, conveniently located in many, many locations, and somehow they're powered. I don't know if that's for the credit card or somehow the access is extremely convenient. It creates great convenience for the travelers, the commuters, the visitors. So I've seen it in action, and it was well maintained. In fact, I saw a truck that was taking there was an oversupply at one station to another station. But whatever program they have in Paris, it seemed to work extremely well. And if we can do something like that in the corridor where we have those transit lines, as Mr. Reyes has explained, was the gold line or the orange line or whatever line, there's that commute where you walk and jump on that and then get to that destination. So anyway, I just want to give my support. A great program.
Mr. Labange.
I just wanted to say one thing we would have to do, and Mr. Zine, and make it more possible for people to carry their bikes on our mass transit, number one. I think that's real key. And I just came in as Mr. Rosendahl was speaking. Where are you going to start in the city?
We don't know, and that's one of the things we hope to discuss with the proposer. We, again, want to...
Why do you start between downtown and USC? I think we should give them some direction, members. We have to cluster, start in an area that connects people, because there's a lot of... Ms. Perry, do you have any concept on this?
Yeah, actually, I've already started working with a private sector.
Ms. Perry, you want to use the mic so we can all hear you, please?
Perhaps... well, you probably didn't know this because I've already started working on it with a private source of funds so that we could get it done faster, so without having to use public money. And I should be able to bring something forward for us to take a look at within about 30 days.
But you would agree that probably we should look at some corridors first?
Well, it's logical because there's students there and they already have bicycles, so they're inclined to ride bicycles. LA Live already has a shuttle system between USC and the university. The students are taking it, so it's an interesting way to, move people back and forth. But I had been approached by a private source to create and extend some of the bike lanes, and then to create a bike sharing program so that people could move back and forth between the southern part of the city and downtown Los Angeles for work and for fun. And Figueroa seems to make some sense, although we are discussing the possibility of using other north-south connectors that are less traveled, not as heavily traveled. So I should be able to bring something back to you to the council to discuss, but my goal is to do it without public money, because I think we'll be able to move it through faster. The initial direction from Councilmember Gruhl was to do this with using no source of public funds, no cost to the city, and that's what we have proposed, what we've asked the proposers to come back to. But one thing I would actually like to ask of you, Councilmember Perry, is that you amend the motion or direct staff to work with your staff and whoever you're dealing with. If we're going to do this, and Metro is going to do this, we want the systems to all integrate and work together. Okay, why don't I do this, because I'm still in discussion mode, and I wouldn't want to bring in staff until I know that we have something of a commitment that's substantive and some agreed upon, points like location and more than anything cost of money. But we will turn to you with respect to costing it out. My staff's already been gathering information from successful programs, not just in this country, but obviously Paris and other places where this works. The same concept as the zip car, which USC also uses now. So, when I get it fleshed out to the point, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do it within 30 days because we're already meeting. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Labange, anything else? Just the last thing I want to say. In committee, Ms. Perry, that's what we talked about. Ms. Perry, that's what we talked about, to try to pick some spots that are existing, whether there's already a connectivity, because we're not going to be successful if we try to do everything, Michelle. And you do a great job for the city and try your best, but we could not even get off the blocks, out of the blocks, unless we kind of give you some direction. And next after that, maybe the UCLA corridor towards Venice or something, extend it up wherever it is. But I think it's important that we focus, because I don't think we'll be successful if we absolutely try to do it everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LeBonge. Ms. Perry, you're still on the queue. Did you have anything else to add? Okay. Mr. Reyes?
One of my colleagues I just want to emphasize is that a few months ago we had the Bicycle Coalition from the county and others come to MacArthur Park, and we're passing out lights and helmets, and what was very evident to me is that there's a huge population out of necessity who are riding bikes. There's a huge population that's transit dependent, and there's nothing to take away from the recreational element of it, or folks who choose a certain lifestyle, which is very significant. But for thousands and thousands of folks, it's their only way to get to work and back, because they are trying to save what they can for the rent, for their food, and other necessities. And it's a huge population base that we should be more, I believe, responsive to in terms of how we deal with these issues. So I just needed to share that with you, because it was very surprising to me to see the number of elderly people on bikes, folks who just did not fit that profile. I mean, these were folks who you would think would not be on bikes anymore, but out of necessity are riding these bicycles. So it's for them that we need to also advocate for. So I just needed to share that with you. Thank you.
Mr. Garcetti, followed by Mr. Smith and Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I'll just be very brief on this as well. This is definitely an idea that we've been kicking around for a long time and seen some great examples of around the world. My father actually has a book of photographs coming out that chronicles the Paris experience. That is a beautiful kind of fashion book of Parisian fashions and people on bicycles. Here, I think it's also critical. One of the things why it's great to have Metro involved is some of the areas that I think are going to be most successful are Hollywood, where borders in West Hollywood and Beverly Hills, Santa Monica on the west side, where our city boundaries may end, but certainly a bicyclist wants to go between those places along transit corridors, and I think that will be very critical. And as much as we can be aggressive with our neighboring cities, not just through Metro, but with the actual city leaderships there, I think that will lead to a successful bike share program. And Mr. LeBonge, in Hollywood, we've been looking at this very aggressively. We think Hollywood is one of the most easily successful places. You can take a red line in from the valley, you can come from downtown, and we've been putting that biking infrastructure in place, with whether it's NavigateLA.com, NavigateHollywood.com, which helps you get to the right places and know where your bike paths are, to all the old parking meters that we've converted into attractive bike racks, and soon, very soon, sharrows that we'll be able to have on some of our main corridors, especially Fountain, which is a great biking street, which is long overdue, and I've been disappointed how long that's taken, but we will get that this spring, as well as up and down on Vermont. I mean, we should be going out there, and I know some people have gone and just painted them themselves while waiting, but the article on Long Beach was a great example yesterday of what can be done, and and Michelle, you do a great job with stuff. I think LA is hampered by the size because we're a collection of villages. Villages can move quickly, and we have to think like villages, so that areas of the city that are ready to move on this stuff, yes, we want the interoperability, but we have a critical mass in East Hollywood of cyclists that are ready to move, in Silver Lake and Echo Park that are ready to move, and certainly that's something I'm going to be pushing a lot this year. But I think as we look at the bike share program, Hollywood is really an ideal place to take advantage of the red line and that transit infrastructure. So I look forward to the responses back to this. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I have no problem with item 20. I think we're all concurring that this is a program that needs to go forward as best we can. Item 22 is where we have a difference, and that is that the Public Safety Committee voted unanimously to ask for a report back from the city attorney. When we heard the matter in public safety, our concerns is that a lot of the issues that were brought forward to us by the bicycling community asking for legislation really were in the area of the state legislation and the vehicle code, which we do not control and do not have the right to exceed. And so we'd asked for a report back on a number of those issues, and they are not here present today. So I'm asking the council to vote for 20. Everyone's on side on that one. But on 22, approve the Public Safety Committee report number A, which asks for a report back, and hold back on that until we have before us the legal issues resolved that we asked City Attorney to propose. And Madam City Attorney, would you like to expand upon that?
Sure.
Just before you do, let me just say, because my time will run out while you're talking, that I've spoken to Mr. Rosendahl. I know he wanted to talk on 22, that we've agreed that the idea would be best to come back to us in a joint committee meeting, and we'll have a joint Transportation Public Safety Committee to hear these legal issues on the harassment part. But Madam City Attorney, if you would.
Judith Reel, Deputy City Attorney. We would be glad to come back with a report. It always makes me nervous when you say, for the City Attorney to come back with a report. We will come back with a report, but we'd like it to be in conjunction with the Department of Transportation. In speaking with Ms. Mowry, there were a number of problems that bicycle riders face that she identified. And some of it can be addressed, has to be addressed through state law. Some of it can be addressed through municipal ordinances. And so what we were discussing, Ms. Mowry and I, was reaching out, having the Department of Transportation, to the extent they haven't done so, though I know they've been working with them, reaching out to the bicycle community and coming up with those matters that the Department of Transportation believes is crucial to ensure the safety of bicyclists, and then we will work with the Department of Transportation on each of those issues, saying, well, is this something that can be addressed by state law or has to be addressed by state law, or is this something that can be addressed by way of a municipal ordinance, and sort of taking a more omnibus approach to bicycling safety in the city of LA and how to best achieve that.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, the number one issue for me is the integration of the real issues out there in community about harassment and bicyclists' needs. We know what happened in Mandeville Canyon and the road rage. I immediately put in a motion for Bicyclist Bill of Rights. We have to change our culture about bicycle, and we have to learn to work together. Also, as you know, on the 24th of February, Charlie Beck is going to be with us in transportation, and the bicyclists are going to come out and they're going to talk about specific examples where they feel harassment has happened and other issues have happened. I think that's a good collective discussion that can add more to this. Most important thing is I don't want to lose track of this, have it go down a black hole or anything like that. What I'd like to do is, as we do our joint meeting on this, it should be after the 24th. Okay, so the 24th, we get all the input, and I urge the cyclist community to come up with stuff that makes sense. And then we schedule a meeting, a joint meeting, where we act on it. If in the meantime, City Attorney's Office can come up with something that we can look at, that we can integrate into both the Transportation Committee and into the Public Safety Committee, we'll be able to get timetables that work. My goal is this. It is now January, almost February, that by sometime in March, by the end of March, is my goal, that we have before us as a council a potential ordinance that gives the bicyclists the rights and the appreciation and deals with some of these harassment issues that have been compelling over the years. I think the Beck part of it will help us a lot. He's put a new person in charge of the whole relationship with the cycling community, and we need to change the culture, not only of the car culture, but also of the LAPD and its relationships and histories. And I think we're going to do that. I'm committed to that. Okay. Thank you for that.
Mr. Koretz. Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's okay if we send this back to committee. I'm okay to hear it there. But I think it's important one way or another that we find a way to deal with harassment in our own laws. I think it will take a little work. It would be easier just if it was in state law in a clear way. But I think we have to send a clear message that this kind of harassment is happening, that everyone has to take it seriously. I think just by acting on it and having this kind of discussion, it's out there more in the public, and I think that will be helpful, that it's not okay to do these kinds of things with cyclists. And the message that to LAPD folks that are on the front lines, that it's not okay to allow it, and we actually have to crack down on it. So I think it's fine to hear it in committee. If it takes a little while to do this right, I think that's okay. But we have to have an ordinance, we have to send a strong message, and we have to do what we can to put a stop to it.
Mr. Labange, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
Michelle, a question. I've noticed a significant number of people, and I don't know if any of my colleagues have, riding bicycles in the face of traffic. Have you noticed that at all?
We certainly do have a problem with wrong-way riding. We need to do more education.
But I mean, you've seen an increase in that.
When the gas prices went up last year...
No. An increase in people riding on the wrong side of the road. Have you... Well, you live southwest of City Hall, so I'm not sure if we travel the same
Well, I do
path.
ride down to City Hall, but...
Right.
I would say that they're about the same now as they were before the gas prices spiked. When the gas prices spiked, we saw a number of novice riders all of a sudden jump on bikes and start to ride, and their inclination was, it appeared that their
What do
inclination
we
was
do
to
about
ride against
people
traffic.
who ride on the wrong side of the road?
Well, there are a number of things we need to do. First of all, we've already been in discussion with law enforcement about education programs, but they do want to take more of a stronger lead in letting people know about the laws regarding cycling in the city. Wrong-way riding is one of them. There are a number of people that still believe that riding against traffic is not only legal, but it's the safe thing to do, and we need to teach them that it's not.
How do you teach them?
Well, I think that's where law enforcement gets involved, that we have the face of authority saying this is not okay to do. And
Who's your liaison at LAPD?
I can't remember the commander's name, but we're talking with the commander.
There's a commander now.
He reports directly to the chief.
I think it's important because a number of people, I don't want to see anybody get hurt. It is something that causes conflict. Paul, when you spoke a few minutes ago, you talked about that, but sometimes people, whether they're in cars or on bikes or on skateboards, there's conflict sometimes in the street, then they argue with each other, and then an incident happens, which you don't want to happen. But the three things of traffic are engineering, education, and enforcement. And I think we've got to focus on that for safety issues there, because people do that, and it becomes it. I had a situation just the other day where I parked my car legally in a meter zone on Hollywood Boulevard. In front of me was a small van, and I usually fly out of my car. I didn't fly out of my car, and right as I was preparing to get out of my car, someone was coming right there, and had I opened my car door, it'd be opposite of what you do. I always look in the rearview mirror for cyclists. I'm not thinking they're coming that way. So there's a significant increase, so it's up to you and your task in your department to work with the police department to try to resolve this so there's no conflict. Is it important, too, that cyclists stop at stop signs?
Absolutely. Any user of the roadway should stop at stop signs.
Should we have little stop signs below the big sign to remind cyclists?
We don't need cyclist-specific stop signs.
But I think there needs to be education for that.
Absolutely.
On that issue. Safety is very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Rosendahl, for clarification on this matter, we have 20 and 22, and we need to take a vote on 20 before we get to 22, but suddenly we went into 22. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And so we'll just go back to where we were with 20, which was to move forward with the 90-day period, approve the department's recommendations, direct the department to coordinate with Metro's efforts, and direct them to report back in 90 days. That is item number 20, and we need to vote on that.
So let's vote on item number 20. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Very well. Now let's jump into 22.
Now we're at 22, and Mr. Smith started the conversation on 22, as you saw, and Mr. Koretz jumped in. At this point, I would like to let the public comment come in on 22, and we can hear what the public has to say. Then we come back to ourselves and we'll vote.
All right. So we are now on number 22. Ted Rogers.
Good morning. My name is Ted Rogers. I write the blog Biking in LA. My name is Ted Rogers. I write the blog Biking in LA. I think we're all familiar with the case of Christopher Thompson and Mandeville Canyon, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I myself am a law-abiding cyclist with over 20 years' experience riding the streets of Los Angeles. I stop for stop signs and red lights. I signal. I ride on the right side of the road. I try to ride safely and courteously. And yet, I've been honked at, yelled at, told to get off the road, had objects thrown at me. I've been buzzed by cars passing too close. I've been forced off the road. I've had doors open into me. And I have been intentionally hit by a car in a road rage incident in Mr. Koretz district. I'm not alone. Any cyclist you talk to will tell you stories like this. from a beginning cyclist to an experienced cyclist. It happens to all of us. We need your protection. We cannot survive on the streets of Los Angeles without your protection. So I urge you to pass this motion. Personally, I'd like to see you skip the unnecessary step of asking the city attorney to report back, because by necessity in drafting this law, they'll have to determine what they can and cannot do. But either way, we need your help and we need this to move forward. I urge you to support it. Similar laws have already been passed in Boise, Idaho, Columbia, Missouri, and they're about to pass one in San Antonio, Texas. So please, follow their lead and do something to keep us safe. Thank you.
David Gatson. David Gatson.
Okay, I would like to say I've also been harassed by cars, a lot of cars, and ridden off the road and have things thrown at me, and so I would like to see this passed also. And also pedestrians too. In fact, I almost got hit just crossing the street here from the red line. There's like this stop sign where there's a crosswalk, and it's a stoplight, you know, one of those blinking ones, and the car didn't stop at all. And I guess there was like a bus here, and I was going through it, but it was like red, so the guy was supposed to stop, and he just didn't stop at all, and I was hitting it. And another thing I'd like to say is a lot of the, although this is related more to the earlier one, but it's kind of related to harassment too, is a lot of the bike paths are also a good option to have, because then you don't have to worry about cars at all, and you don't have to, you know, like the LA River bike path is a really nice one, because you go under the streets, you don't even have to cross the streets and all that. So I like to see some of that, you know, go through. And also I'd like some of the ones like the Orange Line bike path, I'd like to see a little bit more thought put into it, like when you're crossing the street and stuff, because it actually ends up being a lot slower than just going on the road, and they seem to design things more for recreation than actual transportation. Some of it's because it's longer, but they couldn't do anything about that because, you know, I think it's just where they got the right of way. So, but it's still good to have a, you know, a separate path like that. And I guess that's...
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker on this matter will be Ian.
My name is Ian Marchbanks, and I'm a cyclist. Like everyone who I cycle with, I've had numerous road rage incidents in my neighborhood in West Los Angeles. I'm sorry? Okay. And I just want to talk to you about one specific incident that brings a lot of issues together. I was riding my bike on Palms Boulevard. A very fast luxury car pulls up in the lane behind me going probably like 50 miles an hour on a residential street, and he leans on his horn, so I swerve out of the way and have to slam on my front brake to avoid hitting a parked car, and I crash. I ended up catching up to him about a mile and a half later, still bleeding, and I got his license plate number. I went down to the Pacific Division, and I went to the desk officer. He told me that he couldn't take a report because I was riding with traffic when I was supposed to ride against traffic. This is what Councilmember LaBonge was talking about, and this is something that's been incredibly frustrating to me. I talked to a supervising officer. He told me he couldn't take a report because there was no law broken. And he asked me what law was broken. I said, well, he caused me to crash. And so they ended up calling West Traffic Division. The first officer that takes the call tells that officer that there was nothing that he can do. What law was broken? What law was broken? So I asked to have him ask for a supervisor at West Traffic Division that's on the phone. That supervisor then said, well, I can't believe that this officer said something. You can charge him with a hit and run. Never got investigated. I gave up because I thought it was more important to spend my time talking to the senior lead officer of my area at Pacific Division to see what the hell is going on. Turns out he was a cyclist, and he understands how frustrating it must be to deal with these issues of a complete lack of awareness of the laws among the LAPD pertaining to cyclists. And he said he'd do all that he could.
Sir, thank you. Thank you for your conversation on that. Siku? Again, folks, you have 2 minutes to speak on this matter, and there's a clock in front of you.
Good morning. My name is Shiku Thompson. I wasn't actually going to come up to speak today, and I just wanted to come and see this process. I've seen it many times on television from home, but today I realized that I have to speak up for the thousands of cyclists that are out there who aren't able to speak to you directly. So today I'm going to say that I think Los Angeles has the utmost potential to become one of the most brilliant bike cities in this world. And the people in this room today have the opportunity to take that foot and take a step forward and say, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it now. So I want to let you guys know that I too have been harassed by motorists. And while I was going eastbound to work, crossing over the Palms overpass at the 405, it's a beautiful overpass that just got rebuilt, but along the side was a lot of gravel, so I kind of skewed towards the lane. And at that point, a motorist came flying by me, literally maybe a foot from hitting me. And as we normally do, we met at the red light. He looked over at me and said, "Do you want to die?" And at that point I said, "Well, do you want to go to jail?" And perhaps I shouldn't have said that. But after I did, he began to berate me over and over with such profanities that I felt afraid to continue to bike. Because this guy, for all I know, could have run me off the road or even tried to hit me with his car. So today I'm saying that we need help. I can't go to a cop and say, "Hey, this guy, he's making some horrible comments at me," and I feel threatened. My life felt threatened because there is no law to protect me. So today, you guys have the opportunity to make a difference and to really take in consideration what we are saying to you. So please support us, because we support you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Arisha Samdorowski. It's hard to read some of these letters, ma'am. So go
Hi,
ahead.
my name is Arisha Smolarski, and I'm with the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. Motorists need to be held accountable for harassing cyclists and pedestrians through the implementation of this ordinance, and should be considered a Class A misdemeanor. There should also be a training for motorists on how to effectively share the road with cyclists. In addition, this should also include a 3-foot passing law, which would greatly enhance the safety of all cyclists, commuters, and recreational riders alike. In the workspace, we have an anti-harassment law to protect against sexual harassment, and no LAPD officer needs to be present. But on the road, cyclists do not have the protection from LAPD and from the city. There is a rising number of cyclists on the road, and they have equal rights to share the road, but we're not being treated in that way. This ordinance would help protect the rights of cyclists and pedestrians. We are the vulnerable users of the road, and it would demonstrate that the city is dedicated to enhancing our growing transportation options and protecting all of its users. Thank you.
Thank you. Arnold Sachs.
Good morning. Thank you. Arnold Sachs. Councilman LeBon's addressed wrong-way riders, but nobody's addressed riders on sidewalks. The city attorney mentioned that there are some municipal codes that can be enacted versus state codes, so why not act on the municipal codes if you don't need state authorization? Why put it off to get both done at the same time? And thank you, Mr. Oh, one other thing, and this is going to be maybe contentious for bicycle riders, but there's unfortunately, the streets and the developments of this city were car-oriented, or transit-oriented, vehicle-oriented. There was a discussion in Transportation Committee regarding a licensing of bicycles. Maybe it needs to be revisited for a minimal fee for upgrades to bicycle lanes. that could be used for bicycle lanes, that could be used for striping on the streets, that would help to enhance the bicycle riders' usage. And I'd like to thank the city attorney for allowing the council to go off topic by discussing item 22 while the council was opining on item 20. Different codes for different sides of the podium, just like on transportation.
Michael Gondal.
Good morning. My name is Michael Gardial, and I'd like to thank Mr. Reyes and Mr. Rosendahl for trying to pass this motion. I'm a citizen of the United States. I'm a businessman, I'm a homeowner, and I'm a taxpayer. And for the past 5 years, I have chosen the bicycle as a means of transportation in Los Angeles. I'm here today to push for the anti-harassment to cyclists ordinance to be passed. But I'd like to point out that this goes beyond harassment. This is discrimination, not just about race or financial status, but because of my choice of vehicle on the road. I am not what they say a scofflaw cyclist. I obey the rules of the road, and I am courteous. And I am a victim of harassment and discrimination as a cyclist. I've had food and cans thrown at me. I've been yelled and cussed at. I've been harassed by the police and needlessly detained on my way to work by police for no reason other than I may be a missing person. I have been hit by cars that deny my right of way. I have witnessed cars hit and run incidents with my friends. And little to no support has been taken by the police. I know people who have been killed in hit and runs that have not been pursued by the police. I've had my life threatened by others while riding my bicycle. I choose a healthy, clean, green, cost-effective way to get around town, and I need my rights to be enforced as a viable means of transportation on the road. Many cities have, such as Portland and Chicago, focus on protecting the rights of these cyclists. They have the support of the mayor and the police. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker, Matt Dowd. And then we have 3 council members to speak on this matter.
And I just don't understand why they have this whole mixed up system here where 1 minute the police are telling me there's no comment and the next minute it's like calling me. But look, I'm a cyclist every day, many times, and I'm a motorist and a stakeholder. And, you know, I don't get into road rage incidents. And unfortunately, though, the city of Los Angeles is not cycle-friendly. The streets, the trucks, the whole setup is without express cycle lanes. There's always going to be trouble. So you're trying to bite off something, you know, and you know, look, I've ridden 1,000 times, and the only time I ever got into an incident was with a United States Postal Service truck doing something. So yes, you're trying to do something here which sounds good and everyone wants it, but it's going to be an unenforceable thing like a lot of other things.
Mr. Reyes, followed Mr. Cardenas, then Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, this whole issue of harassment is about a cultural shift at many different levels, starting with our personnel in the trenches, our police officers, and everyone that's representing this city as an employee, as a civil servant. That culture has to shift, and it won't start unless we bring up these issues over and over again and essentially demand accountability. So I'm hoping through this ordinance that we can allow for that awareness to begin and heighten that priority. And I've received several calls in my office where we have hit-and-run incidents, and the protocols and how they respond ranges from indifference to, oh, well, and we have higher priorities. Councilman, what do you want us to do? We have a robbery here, a shooting here, and this is very low on the pecking order. And so it is going to be about how we prioritize and shift that whole sense of responsiveness that we should be, I believe, putting forth at a level that it deserves. When I see how our youngsters right now, who can't afford insurance, who can't afford gas, who are essentially in a place where bicycling is their only means of transportation, by our encouraging this new environment, I think will stimulate a different level of confidence and, quite frankly, safety from them, or for them, I should say. You know, about a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, my then 14-year-old son went bicycling with him, and he kind of sped up ahead of me because I couldn't keep up for obvious reasons. And a carload of guys come by, and they start throwing eggs at me. And they're laughing and just thinking it's funny. But in the process, I'm trying to maneuver from going off the road and hitting the car that was parked, and it was very startling. To call the police for that would have been, I think, useless at that point. But the fact that I even reacted that way is a clear indication of how far we need to go. That it does make a difference to make a report, and hopefully we'll get people that will be responding to the cases like we heard from our public today. So I look forward to moving this, and if there's any way we can use land use controls to augment this process, I'm going to work with Councilman Rosendahl to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Mr. Cardenas, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
Oh, we had that debate during the charter reform.
Is Cardenas here? Cardenas?
Thank you. If the city attorney could clarify something. Somebody came to the microphone and mentioned an incident that occurred and basically explained the scenario of almost getting hit by a car, having some words with somebody, and the person actually making threatening comments. If somebody's on a bike or in a supermarket or on the sidewalk or what have you, and somebody threatens them with bodily harm verbally or what have you, can't they report that?
I'm working with the police department on that, but I believe that could be an assault, yes.
But it doesn't matter if you're on a bicycle or on your feet or pushing a stroller or a supermarket cart. You get what I'm saying? If somebody says, I'm going to hurt you, or I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to run you over, or wait till I see you again, I'm going to get you. Aren't those kinds of statements the kind of thing that somebody could report, and doesn't the police department have to at least try to look into it or follow through or whatever it is supposed to happen next?
Yes. And that was going to be one of the things that if we do report back on this would be, again, you know, frankly, I'm happy to draft an ordinance if instructed to do so by council, but we also want to look at what's already covered by existing laws, and if council is going to move to adopt an ordinance, maybe we can make it, fill in the gaps or make it more meaningful or easier to enforce. But yes, there are already laws that cover a lot of the situations that have been described.
And also, I think in the spirit of this whole dialogue, I think part of this whole thing isn't only, and I said this in committee, it's not just about the current laws or ordinances on the books or the ones that we could create or what the state does or does not allow us to implement on this matter, but it also has to do with education, awareness from people who drive cars, people who ride bikes, people who enforce these laws or what have you, awareness from top to bottom of everybody to understand what is enforceable, what the current laws are, what people's rights are, etc., right? Isn't that part of the spirit of what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lamonge?
Yeah, I know I talked to Chief Moore, who's here on another issue. Chief Paysinger from the police department is organizing this. The lieutenant or sergeant is handling this. Have you met with them at LAPD?
Not yet.
They're right across the street now.
We have met with LAPD, but not either of those individuals. And I'm sorry, the name of the commander we met with escapes me.
Dave Doan, I believe, is the commander or deputy chief or whatever.
That's who we met with.
Right. Anyway, long story short, I think it's, just as Mr. Carter said there, in these issues taking off from what public comment made, we should be able to respond right away if someone was walking down the street and someone pulled in a driveway and started to harass them. They should. I do know I have another problem, too, the safety issue related to bicycles on the Los Angeles River Bikeway. Because of theft of city property, the stolen copper has caused the lighting system to be about $1 million to repair. Give a quick add on that, Michelle. Safety, not just from a law enforcement, from a public works side.
What I think you know, and most people know now that are involved with the LA River Project, is we have twice had acts of vandalism out there that have stolen, not once, but again twice, all the copper lighting out there at a cost of about $200,000 to the city. At this point, we have not replaced, because we were hit again and unable to replace. Bureau Street Lighting has been working on this, and they're working on, they've used a different type of pull box, if you will. It's essentially how the wiring is installed.
So they're working on, but I want to keep some pressure on you to be a voice for this, to try to work with us. We got to look with the CAO for some gas tax money, because the lights are not on, and we're in Pacific Standard Time, and it's dark.
Well, there are two things. We're working on the pull boxes, which seem to be going pretty well. The other thing that we need to do is work a little bit more with DWP on the number of stations. They only give us so many stations for the lighting, which means we have to have a larger gauge of wire, which makes it more attractive to theft. We're also looking, actually, we're going to LED lighting on the new segment.
Fletcher to Mr. Garcetti and Mr. Reyes' area. Right area on the river.
LED lighting will allow
Actually, I'm going to have to bring it back to the harassment issue that's on item 22.
Well, I was harassed by no darkness, Mr. City Attorney, so if you understand that, I would appreciate it. That being said, I'll take your advice as well. On this issue of harassment,
we're working on it.
It's real key. And I would just like to say, before the city attorney stops me, in 1939 they built the first parkway, then what became the modern freeway system. Over the years, we've expanded the freeway system. We have to find a way to expand our bike system, not just for recreation, as one of the public speakers said, which is important, but also for commuting and safety. Last question. Does it make more sense to say share the road or watch for bikes? Watch for bikes. All right, I want to change all the signs to watch for bikes. Do I got a second?
Mr. Lamont,
Second
thank
from
you.
Ms. Hahn. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Okay, this is the wrap-up point now, folks, and I just want to say that the culture of the car is going to end now. This ordinance, when we put it in place, will protect bicyclists like they've never been protected before in this city. Our police have not been responsive in many instances. In fact, in some instances, they've been the problem themselves. That's why I'm very happy when Charlie Beck said he would meet with everybody on February 24th, so he can anecdotally hear real stories like we just heard from constituents here. They're not made up. I got jarred right into this when my Mandeville Canyon road rage resulted in what it did. And we will have an ordinance that will protect bicyclists, and we will do it right so that it isn't challenged and gets done. That is my pledge to the cyclist community. Here's what we need to appreciate. One of the reasons we need to do it are the following. Knowingly throws a projectile or discharges in the direction of a person riding a bicycle. Threatens any person riding a bicycle verbally or by using his or her vehicle for the purpose of injuring, frightening, or disturbing the person's ride on the bicycle. Or knowingly places his or her vehicle within 3 feet of a cyclist while passing, or following, or making a physical contact with a bicyclist from a moving vehicle on the roadway, either by physical person or using of an implement. Knowingly places a person riding a bicycle in concern of immediate physical injury. Knowingly engages in conduct that creates a risk of physical injury or death to the person riding a bicycle. All of us know of somebody that's been through a hit-and-run situation here. Some of these stories are just ridiculous. And that's why I'm so thrilled Charlie Beck is going to change the culture of the police department on this. And we're going to get from the police the support that cyclists should be getting that they have not been getting. And this ordinance will do that. So here's what I want. A report back in 30 days on the status of what we know from Sacramento and what we don't know from Sacramento. That's the first report. The second report will be after the 24th, when we hear anecdotally with the chief, and I want us to work with the chief and his new people on how we put this together properly so that within the codes of the LAPD there are rules and regulations that officers must appreciate and never again in when you heard that story out there that a person didn't know this or said the wrong thing or whatever. The officers are trained, and in the training will be the Bicycle Bill of Rights and their rules, too. And then when that meeting is over on the 24th, we'll take a deep breath, we'll look at it all, and by the end of March, I want coming before this council an ordinance with teeth in it that gives the cyclists the rights and the privileges that they deserve. I want us to look at other places where they've already done it, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I want us to, for the first time in this great city, change our culture of the car and appreciate everybody's mode of transportation, be it the pedestrian, be it the cyclist, be it the mass transit, the bus rider, and everybody else.
Thank you, Mr.
So thank you very
Rosendahl.
much.
That matters now for a vote.
Mr. President, just for clarification, I believe the Public Safety Committee report was moved.
I'm sorry.
The Public Safety Committee report was moved, correct?
Well, the Transportation Committee and the Public Safety Committee report will be part of this process with a joint meeting of the two committees that will both come back within that sense. Because I would frankly like to do my transportation forthwith, but Mr. Smith and I have worked it out. But we do need timetable.
So, Madam Clerk, we have 22 up for a vote.
Correct.
The matter is now before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's a request now to go to 23. So, number 23, please.
That was called special by Councilmember Garcetti.
Mr. Garcetti, number 23, sir.
Okay, thank you. I believe there's cards from the public on that as well?
There are cards from the public. Would you like
We
to
can
do
hear
that
from the
first?
public first on the DNA issue. I know that our public safety chair will speak, and I'll follow him.
Very well. On number
Thank you for your
23.
patience.
Arnold Sachs. Arnold Sachs, are you here, sir?
Good morning. Thank you. Arnold Sachs. Another program, another bottomless pit of unaccountable funds. Tax increase for the trash to hire more police, unaccountable funds. Camera fees for police cars, no cameras, unaccountable funds. DNA testing, crime is down in L.A. The only thing that's gone up, DNA testing. DNA testing, evidence has increased, but crime is down all L.A. across the board. Violent crimes, property crimes, murders, every crime is down in L.A., but DNA testing has gone up for rapes. It doesn't make sense that the DNA testing for rapes has gone up while the crimes have gone down.
Thank you very much, Sherry.
I'm sorry.
Sherry Linwan. That was your last minute for today. Thank you very much. No, you had 1 minute left. Thank you very much. Sherry Lenwin is our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sherry Linewand, and I am the co-chair of the Human Rights Watch California Committee South. We shouldn't be here today having to deal with this motion. Funding for the 26 criminologists in the LAPD's crime lab was approved last spring and touted to be exempted from the hard hiring freeze. We only learned last week that those positions had not been approved by the Managed Hiring Committee, and now we have lost over 6 months, during which time a secondary backlog of unverified and uploaded into CODIS rape kits has grown and continues to grow, and that is a job that only can be performed by the LAPD crime lab staff and not by any outside lab. And a new backlog of new rape kits is being built up due to staff shortages. This represents both a breach of the commitment by the LAPD and the mayor to work hard to remedy the failure of a basic government duty, and a failure on the part of the council to oversee that the commitment was fulfilled by requiring accountability and transparent reporting by the LAPD. Nothing would have happened if the press had not reported on it. This cannot be allowed to happen again. The LAPD should move forward and hire the maximum number of criminologists feasible before the end of the fiscal year, and the remainder of the money should be used for outsourcing. We urge the city and the LAPD to follow through on their commitments to make justice a reality for rape victims and to make our city a safer place. Thank you.
Geraldine Stapleton.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Geraldine Stapleton, and I am the convener and co-founder of the Hollywood chapter of the National Organization for Women, and their immediate past executive vice president, also chair of the Peace and Safety Committee for California Now. I also happen to be a survivor of rape, and I'm grateful to be here to be able to say that. So I know firsthand what the victims are going through, what devastation it is to their lives not to have this evidence, to have recourse and put the rapist away and off the streets for the safety for our community. And of course now has had a long history in working to prevent violence against women, and strongly urges that the City Council pass 10-0089, the request for the transfer of funds to continue the outsourcing of the DNA analysis while hiring the 26 new positions to perform the DNA analysis. I think it's of utmost importance to now that the backlog of rape kits be brought up to date and stay up to date for the safety and preventing further devastation to women's lives in our community. Also, the recent release of prisoners out of our correctional systems, I think is going to have an impact in our community that's going to increase these type of crimes, unfortunately. And I would like to point out, besides saving the women from having to go through this terrible ordeal, that the city would be saving a lot of money in terms of paying out millions of dollars in lawsuits resulting from wrongful convictions. Thank you very much.
Matthew Dowd.
Yes, thank you. So, look, we can probably save a lot of time and vote this through real quick without too much talk. I'll try and wrap it all up. There's a distinct lack of female representation on the City Council right now with the two latest electees. So I know the great Janice Hahn is probably going to get up, and I'll support her on this one. This is a no-brainer. 50% of the constituents would want this. The great Kenny Hahn, Tom LaBonge, I'm sure he's going to get up and support it. I'm just saying, this is a yes vote, and that's why in the city of Los Angeles right now there was concern with these latest elections about whether another woman, Chris Essel, would be elected. This is the kind of thing I'm going to stand up on the female side and put my voice forward that we just put this through as quickly as possible. And in honor of John Ferraro, Tom Bradley, all the great city council people.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. The Public Safety Committee heard this matter on Monday and voted unanimously to move forward with a plan that was proposed by the CAAO and the CLA. We heard very clearly, and you heard from Sherry and others, that this shouldn't have happened. We didn't know it had happened, and it's unfortunate there's a flaw in our system where we've empowered the CLA, CAO to act on our behalf on hiring of people during these very tough times. But when we had the budget hearing last year, we said very clearly, these 26 people were critical of the LAPD. And our chief of police, then deputy chief of police, made a commitment to the human rights groups that we would go forward with this, that we would continue to reduce our backlog. To the gentleman who spoke that he doesn't understand why if crime's down we have a problem, it's because we had 7,000 untested rape kits in our possession a couple years ago. And we made a commitment to the Human Rights Watch Watch people, that we would get and eliminate that 7,000 backlog. We reduced it down to about 3,000. We thought we were getting ahead, and then we found out there's an FBI rule that says we cannot take the test that we get out of the labs and use it and put it in CODIS until we retest it to certify the private lab work. So while we had been investing a lot of money into the private labs, we were caught by this federal government ruling that says, that's fine, use that, but that is only the basis from your work to use once you get a hit. So we've created a double backlog is what we've done. We can't fix that immediately by what we're doing today, but what we are doing today is first establishing with the hiring of these 26 people that we're going to continue the commitment to the Human Rights Watch, that we will reduce that backlog. We're going to go to Washington March and lobby for the legislation that is being introduced that will remove that restriction at the FBI level and let us use those codes or certify those labs for us, which they should be doing, so that we can use that in CODIS and upload it and see if they'll get those matches, make those arrests, and close those cases. But in the meantime, we need to hire those people. We thought we had done that in the budget. We had not, because it was stopped at HRC. This now fixes that problem. We have concurrence from the CAO. We will hire those people as fast as possible. We have a commitment from the police department to immediately put them as a priority on hiring and the background search that needs to be done, and we will go forward. Most importantly, and I think this is the important part of what we've established with this agreement, first with the police department and the CAO, is that these 26 people create the foundation for future crimes, that we will never have a backlog, not just in sexual assaults, but also we'll have a permanent staff on our resources to deal with homicides as well as any other case that may have DNA associated to the crime, including property crimes, violent crimes and property crimes. And so this is a giant step toward the future of resolving those cases using the highest, best technology available to clear up their backlog, for one, as we committed to do, and then on a go-forward basis to never have a backlog ever again, not just in sexual cults, but also in homicides and other property crimes and violent crimes. So I think what we have before us today is the recommendation of the committee is a CAO, CLA recommendation that really solves the problem. The department is happy with that recommendation, and if anyone has any questions, the chief is here and others are here to answer those questions, but we need to move forward. This is the opportunity to break that logger jam that we artificially built upon ourselves and can continue our commitment to that community. Thank you. With that, Mr. Garcetti to make a motion.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much. And let me first start by thanking members of the public who are here for this today. I want to specifically thank Human Rights Watch, Hollywood Now, Peace Over Violence, the Rape Treatment Center, also Joyful Heart Foundation, and thank you especially to Mariska Hargitay, who's offered to actually come here. I think you guys know her from Law & Order SVU in budget time to ensure, but I told her that we are going to get this done. We always love having more people here, but we are going to get this done. And I agree with everything that was said, except for one thing, which was, if I can just respectfully disagree, as a fellow board member of Human Rights Watch, it wasn't because the press put this out there. When we caught this, we put that word out there immediately. That was part of the reason the press articles happened, but I think we were as shocked as anybody else when we came back from vacation learning about this. The way I found out is because in the committee that I oversee on stimulus dollars, I tried to steal some additional dollars for DNA testing, another $1 million for some crime money that was coming through, and on the report back we found out that that had happened. And Mr. Smith and I, as mentioned, are putting in a motion so that all of us, if we've ever said that this is a priority and this has to move forward, even in the toughest of budget years, if there's a change made by non-elected officials, that has to come here so that we know about that and the public knows about that. So I hope that that lesson has been learned as well. Thank you to Mr. Smith, who actually deals with a lot of cold cases in his work as a reserve officer and does a super job chairing our Public Safety Committee, and Mr. Parks, whose record on this as well. As a former police officer, police chief, and now as our budget chair, they had no question, even in the most difficult budget year we have had since the Great Depression. Last time we had double-digit drops, 4 quarters in a row of revenue was the Great Depression. That's where we are here today. But we say so often around here that public safety is job number one. There is no more horrific crime to survive than rape. And we have here obligation to make sure, as we cut everything else in this city, that this stays at the center of what we do. And though some are reporting that we can only hire 11, we said very consciously unfreeze all 26 positions, and I put this on the PD and others to be able to move as quickly as possible to hire as many people as possible. And I appreciate the work the police department has done with the advocates to create a regular reporting mechanism that will also come before us in a public setting, because that should have been in place before. That will be there in a monthly way, and I know that PD has been dealing with a very difficult budget crisis as well, but kudos to them for not overspending their civilian account, and this civilian account is where these criminalists will be, and we need to go all the way till we have 26, even though the backlog is down to 1,200 of the 7,500 that were there. We do not want to create another backlog and have Groundhog's Day as well. I think everything else has been said. I just want to thank the advocates for jumping into action. I'm sorry to waste your time, because you do not need to continue to come back here time and time again, but whenever we see this, we will make sure that you know immediately about that. And just for, as soon as we heard about it, I had staff that was literally not even sleeping at night working on this before any articles were there, because for us, this is a very personal issue and a very deeply felt one. For survivors that are out there, if we can't do this, the city isn't capable of doing anything. And as public safety is our job number one after balancing our budget, those can't conflict. And I think we need to reiterate for the last time here that this is a priority for all of the bureaucracy to hear that we will get done, and it will be the last thing that we cut. So I urge you to vote for this forward today. Let's get as many criminalists hired. And the motion also allows us to catch up on the 2 months that we've lost by putting some of that money into outsourcing, but none of us want to long-term outsource. We should have this in-house. We save money. We should get overtime shifts if necessary, and that's the way we're going to get out of this backlog and finally bring justice to the survivors of these horrific crimes who deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank Mr. Garcetti and Mr. Smith for bringing this forward. Let's be honest, this was a shocking screw-up. I think all the council were surprised. I don't think any of us had a hint that this was going on. We gave clear direction to do it, and it didn't happen. And I think we should point out all of the groups that have been pushing this are focused on human rights, are focused on women's rights. This is not just that kind of an issue. This is a basic public safety issue, because rapists don't only rape. And the fact is, we have a roadmap to the perpetrator of hundreds of crimes. And all we have to do is follow the technology, identify all the people that have committed these crimes, and a lot of these folks are already in jail. They'll have longer sentences. A lot of these folks are out on the streets, and they'll be off the streets once we do this. It makes absolutely no sense to have any kind of a backlog at all on anything that we can do using technology. And the fact is, we have a very low crime rate, but it's not just because we have so many police officers. I think even more so it's because we police smarter now. We have all this technology, and when we use every one of these opportunities, we'll continue to drop the crime rate because we'll know who's committing these crimes, and in a more solid way than we ever have before with DNA technology. So this is very exciting that we're actually going to get a handle on this. We're going to eliminate our backlog, and we're going to set up a system where we can use DNA to our greatest effectiveness. And we've got to do it. I don't think there's any question. I can't imagine that this won't pass unanimously, and send a strong message not just to the citizens out there, but to our own bureaucracy that this is a priority. And there never again can be any ambiguity about it. We want these positions hired. We want this backlog eliminated, and we never want to see this happen again.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And one of our public speakers did make a comment that we have certainly less than 50% of representation on the city council by the female gender. But I will tell you, in this instance, as you've heard, it's really been my male colleagues who have championed this. It's been my male colleagues who brought it up in the first place and who show the exact same outrage that we as women feel about this horrendous crime. And this is basically about public safety, as was said. This is a crime, certainly against women, but at the core it is criminals that are out there, that we have the evidence to convict them if only we would follow up on that. This is shockingly horrendous. This is one of those what the hell happened. It's very upsetting to me, I will tell you, colleagues, extremely upsetting. Of course we're going to vote for this unanimously today. We voted for it unanimously last time. And many of us felt and should feel that once we make such a strong statement here on the City Council as policymakers, that it's going to be carried out. So whatever loophole existed, you're assuring us that it is going to be complete. I'd like to have somebody here telling us that who was responsible, besides the press, for telling us that it wasn't being implemented? Was that the police department? Was that personnel? Who was responsible for coming back to us, or at least key members of the council, and saying, oh, by the way, this is not happening? Can somebody answer me who was that? And do we have somebody from the police department here? Who do we have? You want to come at least, because one of the things I heard today was that it's a priority for you as well. It's a priority for you as well. And we understand that these 26 will be hired, are a priority, but could you just on the record in front of us, God and the public, tell us again why this is a priority and what can we expect after we vote unanimously from this? What can we expect to make sure that it is carried out, that our wishes as a legislative body prioritizing these issues, what can we expect to happen that will give us the comfort that it is being done, and certainly the comfort to millions of women out there that also should be feeling safer because we're doing this. And by the way, someone mentioned the release of prisoners. We had, I believe, 6,000 were released over the weekend, and this is a very critical issue. What can you tell us that assures us that this time, this unanimous vote will actually result in these 26 people being
Ms.
hired?
Harm, if your time is up, they're going to speak. And if you want to speak again, why don't you press your button so that you can cycle back in after they are done speaking?
Thank you. I thought women got a little extra time on this issue. No, I guess not.
Good afternoon. Assistant Chief Michael Moore with the Office of Special Operations. I'm joined today by Commander Mike Moriarty and Ms. Yvette Sanchez-Owens. We're happy to address this group and any of your questions. As to the motion that Mr. Garcetti authored here, the department is happy that, as we appeared in both budget, finance, as well as public safety earlier this week, to report that the Managed Hiring Committee on Friday approved the departments moving forward and unfreezing the 26 positions which were authorized in Phase 3. Phase 3 was to occur in fiscal year 9 and 10. In addition to their actions by the Managed Hiring Committee, they also allowed for the immediate hiring of 10 criminalists and 1 lab tech, which is a portion of those 26 positions, recognizing that the department's ability to train criminalists has practical limits, and presently the number of criminalists that we have who can train new criminalists while still working on active cases is approximately 10 every 6 months or so, depending on the background of the new criminalists that are hired, their training and so forth, and how well they adapt to their new responsibilities. The department also is pleased that in working with personnel departments, our intention is to hire those individuals and actually have them in place and working and beginning their training at the earliest opportunity, which we believe may take as much as it could be May 1st before they're actually working, if you will, on a salary, given the background that needs to occur in addition to, of course, the advertisement selection from the existing list, interviews, and so forth. With that said, that there are unspent monies left that were set aside from the budget for fiscal 9 and 10. Those monies would assist the department greatly in working to continue the outside testing of untested sexual assault kits that constitute the backlog that has been turned. However, those monies that would be that would be freed by this motion, some $850 or so thousand, will not in and of itself be sufficient to eliminate the backlog. There are other grant initiatives and other monies that are being sought to eliminate that. It is our hopes that those resources have been at least preliminarily identified working with the mayor's office as well as with council staff, and that we will be able to achieve elimination of the current backlog by the end of this fiscal year or July of 2010. Now, as to the manner of how we are here today necessitating this from the department on the record before this group, it is our statement that the department was instructed that it could not fill these positions absent the approval of the Managed Hiring Committee. There is within the details of that, instructions within the budgetary process, whether it was at a Budget and Finance Committee instruction or something that came during the debate and deliberations and the adoption of this year's fiscal 9-10 budget. Despite all that, and if that in fact is an error, then we share in that error, but it was clearly the department's understanding that we had to approach the Managed Hiring Committee to be allowed to hire the positions. In addition, those 26 positions were funded for 6 months. They were not funded for the entire fiscal year, which we also interpreted as the intention of this council, and with the adoption by the mayor, with the intention not to hire all 26 within the full year, but over the course of that year. Finally, before the Managed Hiring Committee, at the beginning of this fiscal year, the department was asked additional questions to justify and identify the need to hire these positions. Questions that the department responded to, and up to this motion, the department's understanding was that we did not have the authority to begin this hiring process. So as we sit here today, we are, of course, pleased that the Managed Hiring Committee has found has granted us the approval to hire these individuals, these being with the first 10. It is our desire that the City Council and working with the Mayor's Office and moving forward on fiscal 10-11 budget, that not only these full 26 positions, but the next phase, which is phase 4, which is 10 additional positions, that those be funded, fully funded, so that the department can continue this hiring process so that we can achieve the long-term goal, which we clearly understand from this body as well as from the mayor, which is a desire to have the internal capacity to complete the timely and necessary testing of all sexual assault kits within that LAPD encounters, which is approximately 1,200 a year, and that simultaneous to that while we're pursuing that long-term goal, that we recognize as a city that we do not presently have the internal capacity, even with hiring these 10 additional persons and the next 10 and so forth, to maintain the backlog at zero on sexual assault kits without pursuing outside contracting.
Right.
And then even with the final adoption of Phase 4 and the full training of all personnel, the department will still, on a rare occasion, require outside testing of some sexual assault kits because of unique circumstances and laboratory requirements that exceed our equipment levels and our expertise. And then finally, as to this issue of how we got in this position, I would only offer as a law enforcement professional that we, and as a city and as a department, are not alone. That this is an area of scientific advancement that has created huge opportunities to provide justice and to provide victims with support and closure as to identifying who is responsible for the crime that they were victimized by, who the offender was, and bringing that offender to justice. But these technologies also extend to other victims of violent crimes and to all victims, including property crimes. And the capacity of local law enforcement and local municipal agencies to accomplish the necessary DNA testing is one of fiscal and not so much one of technical. the capabilities are out there. It's a matter of having sufficient funding and having sufficient support to achieve it. It's not the science. It's the matter of having the capacity. And this is very expensive capacity. It is one that can be quite burdensome on a city's revenue and its ability to meet other needs and demands. And this department is looking forward to continue to work with this body to strike the balance of identifying what are our most pressing priorities and having funding sufficient for those priorities, recognizing that we have other priorities as well, that but for a lack of funding we could reach even more closure for other victims of violent crimes as well as other crimes that people are involved in.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl is next for the first time, and then Ms. Hahn for the second time. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President. Always a pleasure to see you up there as President. First of all, I appreciate, Mike Moore, you here as a chief. Never met you before, but you were one of the 3 that were in the finalists there. And so you obviously know what you're doing. You're doing a good job, and you got a promotion to 3rd star. So obviously, you're qualified. My position is real simple. It's normal police work. DNA. It should be a given part of the process of officers doing their job. And so I think what happens today when it's approved, we will never see it as a sidebar issue because it's basic police work as far as I'm concerned, and it's a new and evolving thing. In the year 2001 or 2, it started to be coming into the mindsets, became more productive over the years, and then of course when the backlog created itself, the reality is that there should never be a backlog. A crime happens, you got some DNA stuff, immediately it should be worked on, it should not get cold. So I just want to go on record and let you know this is normal police work. Whatever you need from us to see that it doesn't pop out as some special something or another, which it isn't, let us know, and hopefully this is the last discussion we'll have about DNA. It'll be as normal as anything else a good officer does to investigate a crime. Do you agree with that?
I agree with the principle that we should integrate this into normal police operations. The caution I would have of you is, to this subject of agreeing to this, is that the department clearly wants to do timely testing of all sexual assault kits that will identify offenders and will hold them accountable for their attacks upon women. Absolutely. We're here today to see that this support by the council affords our ability to achieve that goal. As to the integration of DNA analysis into normal police work for all matters of victims, that is an emerging area that we're going to, I will say, this city and this region would benefit by support from the federal government and others to provide this substantial and arguably necessary funding to support that technology.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
And I look forward to working with you, Councilman, as I did on the west side as a deputy chief there some years ago.
Yeah, no,
good to see you.
appreciate that and look forward to that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Ms. Hahn for the second time. Ms. Hahn.
I'm talking to my male colleague here. Okay, just two things for me to wrap this up. Is there a total price tag on what it would take beyond these 26 to the outside hire to, the lab time? Is there a price tag on what it would take to reduce or get rid of the backlog for these DNA rape kits?
Well, so that we understand, I can be...
As you said, it's not technical, it's fiscal.
I can be clear as to the situation before us. The backlog that you have before you today is not a backlog that stands in isolation. It's one that grows and is reduced through production. Well, let me, if I might. Approximately 1,200 sexual assault kits come to the department each year at the present level. That number changes, as does the rate of crime. Presently, we have the ability in-house to test about 300. It is our hopes and beliefs that with completion of Phase 4 of the plan, that we will have, in the maturing of those criminalists, that we will have the ability to work within the department's existing, that staffing at that level, to complete the timely in-house testing of all sexual assault kits.
Without contracting out.
That is the price tag as we stand here today.
Okay, then the other thing I would like, obviously, is the commitment from you that if, even though we vote for this, we think it's going forward, if there is any breakdown,
Yes.
you know, I would like to have your commitment that you come back, I don't know, public safety, you know, that you have an obligation to come back and tell us. And I think that's what we want, really, for all our departments in the city. Let's all be proactive. If things aren't happening, you got to come back to us. We're the ones that can make those kinds of appropriations. We're the ones that can pass motions. We're the legislative body, the policy body. It is up to us to make things move. So we can't have things lagging in all of our departments. I realize we're all going to be in an incredibly difficult time budget-wise, but we need you to be the advocates for what you do best. The business that you do, the law enforcement, the detective work, you got to tell us when things are breaking down with personnel or managed hiring, any of that. You got to come back and tell us. You owe that to us, and we owe that to the people that we serve.
If I might...
so could I just have that?
Yes, you have my assurance on that. Two ways. First of all, we will be beginning a monthly report to public safety. It'll be a written report. That written report, including the status of tested kits, untested kits, the kits that remain for verification, those numbers will not only be presented to public safety in a written report, but they'll be made public on our website. On a quarterly basis, we'll be back before the full council with a similar report. So this matter
If
will be
something happens in
reported.
between, just come to us.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Garcetti.
Just very quickly, and thank you. I just want to make sure that people knew that PD wasn't the folks that were saying, please don't do this. And I think the monthly thing will be great, the quarterly thing will be great, and now we also have a check of a motion that we're putting in that if the managed hiring committee decides not to hire something that the council has directed it to do, we will be informed. So that trigger before it happens will happen as well. So thank you to everybody, and thank you to LAPD for moving that forward and for believing in this. The culture has absolutely changed 100%, and moving forward, we will have no backlog if we do this right and hire all those criminalists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garcetti. There are no further speakers in the queue. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote?
11 ayes.
Thank you very much. Next item. Forthwith, please. On that item. Next item.
Next item is item number 24, and that was called special for cards.
All right. Card for Mr. Zuma Dog. Mr. Zuma Dog has asked to waive his right to speak on this item. There are no speakers in the queue on this item. Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Next item.
Item number 26, called special for cards.
Arnold Sachs is out of time today, so Zuma Dog, you are up.
Yes, I'd like to speak out in support of this motion because it is about a final map in connection to affordable family project. And let me tell you, people, if there's one thing this city needs, it's to break every zoning rule in the city, every exemption and variance, finally, for affordable housing. Because, by the way, in case you didn't turn on the TV news yesterday, it was on TV2, TV4, TV7, TV11. Wow, there's a budget emergency in this city. Council President Eric Garcetti said it's a full-blown budget emergency, and you're doing everything possible to avoid bankruptcy. So the point is that the city is about to fire thousands
Excuse me, stop his time, please. Mr. Dog, I'm going to have to urge you to speak to the relevant topic that is before you, item 26.
Okay, and please make sure...
Please start his clock again.
Please make sure, Council, you don't try to mind read me and end up in federal court again. Here's the point. This is about affordable housing. I'm here to say we need affordable housing because the city just sat here for 2 years and drove the city right off the cliff like Thelma and Louise, and now you're going to be firing thousands of people. Those people are going to need affordable housing. This city squandered the entire city treasury. They took no action, no leadership. With the housing, you went all upscale, all stuff people couldn't afford. You drove out the middle class, you drove out business, everything's going bankrupt, all the stores are going out of business, so you're going to have a lot of people that are going to need affordable housing. The city is getting prepared to fire thousands of people. That means they're not going to be able to pay their housing bills. That means they're going to be homeless. That's why I want you to pass this affordable housing. I don't care if you have to break every law in the city to make it happen through your variances and exemptions and turning a blind eye, just like you did on the $1 million stuff. So to repeat, the city of Los Angeles, under non-leadership, just blew the treasury. Now we're going bankrupt, and they're firing thousands of people. I hope y'all go straight to hell.
Thank you very much. There are no speakers in the queue on this matter, no additional cards for public comment. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Next item.
Next item is item 28, and that was called special for cards.
Matthew Dowd and Zuma Dog.
I'd rather do 29 if how much time do I have left? I'm not sure, because it's 2. Yeah, let me do the next one.
Matthew Dowd's waived his right to speak on this item. Mr. Zuma Dog. All right, no speakers in the queue. Please open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Next item.
Item 29, called special for cards.
All right, we have cards from Matthew Dowd and Zuma Dog.
Yes, I'll take a minute on this one because there's something in Jan Perry's district, and even though she doesn't like me to talk about stuff in her district, she knows I'm allowed to, which is always good. But the thing I just want to point out with this is that, Jan Perry, she gets $95,000 for the, community beatification, and Dennis Zine, he only gets $5,000 out of his. And Tony Cardenas somehow gets $3 million plus $1.1 million in matching. So all I want to see is that Dennis Zine gets some more money in his district. He should get $95,000 for graffiti removal, and I might even, if he raises it from $1,000 to $2,000, I'll go do the graffiti busting and call the police. But $1,000 is not enough to get shot in Woodland Hills, y'all.
Mr. Zuma Dog.
Yes, good evening, Madam President. It's so nice to be here to address City Council. You're doing such a wonderful job, and I'd like to congratulate you on your leadership. Now, let's say the city's facing bankruptcy, and they're firing thousands of people, and aren't going to be able to run the accounting department, and aren't going to be able to have the police responsive when the auto mechanics can't repair the trucks and the emergency equipment, and when all hell's breaking loose. What's the first thing you would do? A, hire auto mechanics to keep the police cars functional and the fire response functional? Would you B, do something to try to put money to prevent further loss of employees? Or C, beautification projects. It says right here, beautification projects. I know one thing, I don't want one penny spent on beautification anything. The city is not going to be able to fill potholes. I talked to CAO Miguel Santana. There's very limited things the city's going to be able to do, and beautification ain't it, baby.
Thank you. No further speaker cards on an item. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Next item.
Next item is item 35, and that was called special by Councilmember Cardenas.
Mr. Cardenas. 35 is up. I believe Mr. Dowd out of time for today? And what about Mr. Sachs? Mr. Sachs has 1 minute left. Dowd has... Mr. Sachs is finished for today, and Mr. Dowd has 1 more minute. Mr. Cardenas, would you rather have them go first, or would you like to speak first?
Let the public go first.
All right, Mr. Dowd, you may speak first for 1 minute.
All right, yes, thank you. No, just Channel 35 or anybody in the city who's watching, this is, there's been a lot of red flags over this whole bond thing. I remember way back to the day when we had Mr. Fujioka up here in Cardenas was arguing over how we do our bond process, who gets these deals. So I'm here to say that, right now, man, someone needs to be putting a magnifying glass over everything they do out of this council district and Tony Cardenas. I know the federal government's coming for you. That's what I hear. So as far as fighting over this bond, look, there was a process, and he just fought too hard for it. It made me think, wow, why would you go to this length if there isn't something in it for you or some of your homies or some kind of thing? You're getting the $4.1 million from the federal government. It's all shady. I don't like it, but someone ought to look at it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowd. We have Mr. Dog next, and then did you speak already? I'm sorry, you're out of time. So Mr. Cardenas is on the queue. I thought you were coming to speak. Mr. Cardenas, you have the floor.
Thank you. Is the staff here who can help us understand how they did the outreach? One of the things that caught my attention is Los Angeles is in fact home to some bond underwriters and financial advisors. I don't know if we have any bond trustees that are headquartered in Los Angeles. They tend to be a lot larger, such as banks. For example, right now we have on the list on this motion the bond trustees are U.S. Bank and Wells Fargo. However, when it comes to financial advisors and bond underwriters, I'm assuming that we do in fact have some locally headquartered operations in the LA basin. However, it appears that none of them applied, was it? None of them actually applied for those categorical to make it on our list?
Rushmore Cervantes with the Housing Department, that is correct. We advertised in 6 different newspapers, reached out to 5 different community organizations, as well as sent applications or at least notifications to over 40 organizations and individuals in the area that have expressed interest in the past to apply, and we received a total of 14 proposals.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I would ask that you talk to the city attorney's office to see if it's possible to do so. I could imagine if you send out notices to 400 organizations, it would be hard to follow up and make sure that they did in fact get the correspondence, or perhaps if they had anything they'd like to have clarified, at least on the strict basis of what was sent to them. No advantages, of course, to anybody. But since there were 40, I'm wondering if it's at all possible in the future, being that we didn't get any LA-based, LA headquartered organizations even applying, it might behoove us to maybe find out why they're not applying, because those are the people who hire people locally, and when organizations expand, for example, some of these firms are in New York, very happy for them when they expand, but they probably expand disproportionately in New York and then dribble out to the field and add spots. But when a company is headquartered in the LA basin, LA City, LA County, or what have you, I would think that when they start to get more business and they grow, they tend to grow disproportionately at their headquarters and then out in the field wherever else they do business. So is there anything that may preclude us from actually following up when we only have a list of 40 that we're trying to reach out to say, did you get the information? Was it understood?
Right. No, there's nothing precluding us from reaching out to this 40 and perhaps looking to expand the mailing list to identify other organizations that are local to be able to send notifications out to. The department's been instructed to report back in 60 days with potential changes for subsequent RFQs to address this. And I think the department as well as the city can do a better job in this particular area. A lot of this comes down to expertise, and quite frankly, the proposals that we do receive, they just don't have, in the local areas, they don't have the expertise required to carry out these functions. So we may look at potentially having some sort of partnership requirement or partnership bonuses provided in the evaluation of future proposals that come in. That way enabling the local organizations to be able to gain necessary experience and expertise so that in subsequent rounds they can qualify on their own.
Yes, thank you. Mr. President, on opening speaker, do we still get 6 minutes or is it 3? Okay, I'll continue. Well, thank you very much. It's a very encouraging response, but the fact of the matter is, having been a former businessman in a totally different field myself and having applied to governments, etc., most of my colleagues around me used to laugh at me when I kept applying for Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and wanting to be one of their brokers or what have you. They would laugh at me and say, they're never going to respond. Why are you even trying? I give you that scenario because perhaps what we have here for the city of Los Angeles, that for decades, some of these smaller local firms may have been applying, and they've just about given up. Because to put together an RFP or an RFQ or what have you, it does take some time and energy, and it does cost the firm some money, and every time they get turned down, there's an opportunity lost and energy and effort and financial effort actually gone down the drain. That's the nature of the business. But what I'm afraid of is that we, the city of Los Angeles, unfortunately have been viewed for decades now of not being very inviting or not being very well-rounded about doing business with a handful of organizations rather than just doing what the community considers to be our favorites. I think it would be important, especially when we're dealing with lists of 40 or so, not hundreds, that somebody actually follow through and ask a couple of basic questions. Again, not giving anybody any advantages, just basically saying, did you receive the notice? Was there anything in it? Were there any discrepancies or what have you? Maybe somebody will be as honest and saying, yeah, I used to apply 10 years ago. I gave up on the city. I'm doing business with Long Beach or Cudahy or what have you, and they seem to be pretty fair. But to be honest with you, I'm tired of doing business or trying to do business with the city. I have personally heard that from organizations, and the fact of the matter is, now that we've actually been able to give the message that we are looking to do business, for example, with bond underwriters in the city of Los Angeles. When I got here as a councilman, there was probably on the average deal, the takedown for the bond underwriters for local and state firms in the state of California and here in the basin, the average deal, they probably took down about 8 to 12% of the fees at best. Now we actually have some bond deals where these firms have proved responsible and capable, and now they're able to get takedowns of 30 to 50% of the deal, instead of 80% of the deals going to firms in New York and outside of our community that are actually headquartered outside of California. So let me just remind you, it can be done, and let it not be lost on us that some firms out there who are local have given up on the city of Los Angeles. So let's take the opportunity to fairly, responsibly, and legally remind them that we are open to do business with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cardenas. With that, let's go ahead and prepare the roll on this item and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Thank you. That is approved. Next items, please.
Next item, Mr. President, are the closed sessions, item 33 and 34, and I believe there's a card on 34.
Okay, we'll take the card from the public on item 34 first. Actually, I only have 33 and 35. Did I miss a card? Oh, Mr. Sachs had cards in for 31 through 34. Did he reach the limit? Okay. All right, we'll make sure that's part of the record then, and we'll close public comment on those. And now, in accordance with California state law, we'll go into closed session to discuss legal matters that are before the city. With that, if we can please clear the chambers, we'll come back to adjourn the meeting in a little bit. Thank you. back in open session. Do we need to take open session votes on any of the legal matters, Mr. City Attorney? Or Madam Clerk, even?
Yes, Mr. President, on both of them. On item number 33, the recommendation is to approve the city attorney's recommendations to set aside condition number 10, and that's in the case of Palmer 6th Street Properties versus City of LA.
Okay, let's prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is approved. Item 34.
Item number 34, the recommendation is to remand the matter back to the East LA APC for reconsideration.
Okay, we'll move Madam City Attorney.
Is this one? Terry Kaufman, the CS City Attorney's Office, not for reconsideration, but for another public hearing on the
Correct.
appeal.
Thank you for that clarification. So to accept the settlement proposal and send the applicant back to the APC for another public hearing. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is approved as well. Next order of business.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those are posted and referred.
There's an excuse on the desk. Councilmember Perry requests to be excused Tuesday, February 9th to leave early at 10:45, and that's for city business, and that meets council policy.
She is excused.
And that clears the desk.
Okay, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I'm sure Mr. Kretz and Ms. Perry and everybody on this council commemorate today the Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is today, and certainly there are commemorations throughout the Southland and throughout the world, as well as survivors in our midst of the Holocaust and their descendants who live here as well. But we, as a city, remember that this day, and we remember those victims of the Holocaust. Other announcements? Mr. Kretz?
Yeah, if I could just amplify on that. Today marks the 65th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi death camp. And this day, as designated by the United Nations, serves as an international day of commemoration to honor the victims of the Holocaust.
Thank you. Any other announcements, colleagues? Mr. Labange?
This morning I was stopped by the under construction Los Angeles Holocaust Museum in Pan Pacific Park, which is well underway, and I stand with all of us to remember the tragedy, to never forget the Holocaust.
All right. Any other announcements? If not, do we have any adjourning motions? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. Berry?
Two announcements, Mr. Parks.
Oh, thank you. Colleagues, we're going to invite all of you on Thursday. Jan Perry and I are going to do what we did with Katrina and stand on Main Street and solicit funds for the Haiti Relief Fund. And we'd like to invite you to come out and join NBC Channel 4, the Hot Radio 92.3 AM, also 102.7 FM and 98.7 FM, along with the Salvation Army, that will be standing between First and Temple on Main Street, and all money will be going to the Salvation Army for the Haiti Relief Fund. So all of you, if you have time, come out and join us. We'll be out there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. Ms. Perry?
Yes, thank you. I think Mr. Parks is starting at 5:30 a.m.
Staying tonight.
And I'm down there at 6:30, and we did it really well the last time, and I hope we do just as well this time to really show how much we are affected by the disaster in Haiti, because we have so many Haitian residents here in our city too. In the midst of all that, I am going to have a program tomorrow also from 10 a.m. to noon at 4301 South Central Avenue. This is our $15 million investment in South Los Angeles, our first active green roof city-owned building, our neighborhood city hall, and we will cut the ribbon, and I'll be down there from 10 to 12, and then I'll be back on Main Street. This is going to be a joyous occasion. It's a 9,000 square foot building with lots of different amenities for people to enjoy. So come on by if you have a minute.
Mr. Rosendahl?
Yes, speaking of Haiti, in Venice, we're organizing a concert tomorrow night. There'll be all kinds of stars and celebrities there. If you're interested in coming to that, we have ticket prices that would meet anybody's needs. Please call my office downtown here at 213-473-7011, and I'll give you the details. There's been an incredible outpouring of support for the Haitians in their refugee status right now, and the entertainment community is hosting this event tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? If not, do we have adjourning motions today? Mr. Gretz, you have it? Yes? Okay, if I can ask everybody to please rise for adjourning motion.
I'd like to adjourn in memory of Carol Ann Blad, who passed away on January 19th. She was an outgoing, caring person and a prominent political activist and concerned citizen in the San Fernando Valley. She's survived by her husband of 48 years, Leave, her sons Leave and James, her daughter Mary, her grandchildren Sarah, Eric, Agnes, and Aiden. She was also predeceased by her daughter Susan from cancer in 2006. She was born in Illinois and moved to Southern California in the late 1950s. And she began her political activism career on the John F. Kennedy presidential campaign, which is also where she met her husband. And the rest of her life, she was active in local, state, and national campaigns and chaired the Democratic Party of the San Fernando Valley from 1993 to 1996. And when she wasn't working to make her community a better place through politics, she was also making people better one at a time through nursing. She was a registered nurse at Kaiser Permanente in Panorama City and Orange County Hospital, and very notably in the early 1960s, Carol helped establish Southern California's first burn unit at Orange County Hospital. Carol's life and work represents the best of our city's active and engaged citizenry, and she'll be sorely missed.
Thank you very much. Do we have other adjourning motions? If not, Madam Clerk, please.